Chapter 478. Behind the stone door was a long, black passage. While the other members of the team were walking alone in the corresponding black passage, Han Dong released all the things in his body. It was very lively. Clang! Clang! The Hell Monk, Togu, dragged the heavy iron chain with his arms and walked at the back of the team. If there were any abnormalities behind him, Togu could bear it with his body. Han Dong kept his little demonic eye open and walked at the front so that he could see the traps hidden in the passage. Chun-Li, who had learned the secret technique of the Dark Shadow Sect, was able to merge her body into the shadows like Zhen. The difference was that Chun-Li relied more on Yin-Chi. The process of disappearing was more similar to that of ghosts in horror movies. They turned into a wisp of green smoke and disappeared into the darkness. As for Nicole, she was sandwiched in the middle of the team. A pink tentacle grew out of her waist and gently hooked onto the back of Han Dong's hand. Nicole was very uncomfortable in the alternate dimension created by the blood god. There are so many traps. I hope they'll be fine. With the demonic eye's almost cheating ability, all kinds of traps were meaningless to Han Dong. 10 minutes later, they safely passed through the passage and arrived at a small room. Please use your body as an offering for the blood sacrifice. This sentence was engraved on the stone wall directly opposite. There was a hole directly below, and Han Dong needed to bring something to exchange for the so-called offering. If the item provided was not of enough value, it could not be exchanged. Han Dong aimed the demonic eye at the hole, trying to see who was in charge of this transaction. A scarlet color flashed past. There was also an eyeball imprinted with a blood seal staring at Han Dong from inside the hole. Gulp! Han Dong swallowed a mouthful of saliva. There was a little cold sweat on the back of his neck. It seemed that there was no shortcut. The one in charge of this transaction seemed to be a part of the blood god. It's just as Captain Lucius said. This is an alternate dimension created by the blood god. It's basically impossible to find a way to cheat here. The equivalent exchange here requires a limb of sufficient value to exchange for the offering. And the participant is me, not my anomaly. You have to take a limb from me. Han Dong had the ability to regenerate. He could even use the G-virus to regenerate his entire right arm. From Han Dong's point of view, this method might not be devout enough. The Mascarlet House this time showed a very strong religious flavor from the very beginning. The ultimate goal of this banquet was to find blood brew. However, from a deeper perspective, it was more like a test by the blood god for the new lord, a test with strong religious overtones. Perhaps only absolute devotion would be able to receive the truest feedback. Since the blood god is overseeing this death match, then let's try our best to use the method he likes. Rumble, a gray tentacle covered in spots, slowly drilled out of Han Dong's palm. When the tentacle reached 1/2 meter in length, Han Dong steeled his heart and directly cut off the tentacle. Wow! This kind of pain that went straight to the bone marrow and soul almost made Han Dong's teeth break. His body trembled slightly, and he was immediately supported by Togu. Beads of sweat overflowed from his forehead. Cutting off the tentacle caused more pain than cutting off one of Han Dong's arms by 10 times. Taking advantage of the fact that the tentacle still had a certain amount of vitality after being cut off, Han Dong quickly put it into the hole. A bloody hand immediately came from the other side of the hole and received the tentacle. There was a faint burst of joyful laughter. Immediately after, a terrifying tearing mouth without a mouth structure stuck to the hole. The exchange item you gave far exceeds the value of the offering. We will give you additional items as compensation. An arm covered in blood vessels stretched out of the hole. The fingers opened. 2 special items were placed in the palm of his hand. A blood diamond and a sawtooth key inlaid with a small blood diamond. Obviously, the key was an unexpected gain, and the blood diamond was the offering needed to open the door. Since there was no need to fight to obtain the offering, Han Dong also temporarily put Togu and the others back into the prison, leaving only Nicole to transform into a pink octopus and hide in his body. Captain Lucius, you're so fast?" When Han Dong returned to the hall, he found that Captain Lucius was one step ahead of him. Han Dong naturally didn't waste any time during the entire process, and he was quite decisive in exchanging the offerings. "Since it's a test against time, I naturally have to pass the test in the shortest time possible. I used my own cursed blood to exchange for the offerings. I can easily deal with the creatures with fresh blood that appear along the way." Not long after, the 6 of them each held a blood diamond and gathered in the hall. The most dangerous one was Abel. Abel directly transformed into a white wolf with a blood diamond in his mouth, and suddenly jumped out of the passage. A huge bloody hand that was chasing after him seemed unable to chase after him and could only stop at the stone door. Then, it collapsed into a pool of blood and was sucked into the ground. They obtained all the offerings without any mishap. After they were inserted into the corresponding grooves on the stone door, the giant stone door sank into the ground. This time, the corresponding passage was spacious and even bright. A type of candle embedded in a skull was placed in the grooves on the wall to provide illumination. The group of people was moving deeper into the Scarlet Mansion. When they walked out of the passage, they once again arrived at the hall that required specific conditions to continue deeper. Worship of the 3 corpses. A strange English prompt was engraved on the stone wall. Below the words was a strange 3-headed creature engraved on the huge stone door. The 3-headed creature's head was in an empty groove state. Similar to the previous situation, the door needed to be filled in with the corresponding items before it would open. On the side of the room, a special stone door was in an open state. The top of the side door was clearly marked with the Arabic numeral 3. It seems that only 3 people are allowed to enter. After passing a certain test, we will obtain the item to open the stone door. This time, it should be a cooperative test. Lucius immediately made a decision. "Then, the 3 of us will go in. You just wait here." "Wait," Han Dong seemed to realize something was wrong. "Once our team is split up like this, it will all be a 3-person team. Seniors, after you enter, you will undergo some kind of test. And if we stay here, we may also undergo some kind of test. Try to distribute the strength evenly." "Well, Jen, you stay. Nicholas, come with us." "Okay." This was the result that Han Dong wanted. The so-called danger of staying outside was just an excuse. In this red banquet, Han Dong had to personally witness the whole process of Lucius being recognized and conferred a noble title. "These 2 are my teammates. Sorcerer Knights Bill Carter. Wind Knights Tiffany Gary. We were all born as official knights and have been completely strengthened with blood wine. Our individual strength is stronger than newborn hybrid demons. If you kneel down and beg for mercy and offer up everything you have, I can consider killing you quickly and painlessly. If you try to resist, we may inflict a rather painful torture on you within the time limit." Perhaps it was the effect of the blood wine that caused Knight Barrett to be overly arrogant. There was a crazy smile on his face at all times. Because Han Dong and the others were completely covered in cloaks and concealed their auras, they were unable to sense anything. Barrett only thought that they were from the evil filth tribe that had been invited from the surrounding mountains. The leader was at most a newborn hybrid demon. As the 3 fallen knights introduced themselves, Lucius reached out and removed the cloak used for disguise. "Scarlet Knights, Lucius Toth. Greetings to the 3 seniors." At the same time, the aura of death rose, and the cloak that enveloped Lunds was quickly annihilated. A thin face was reflected under the long gray hair. "Doomed Knights, Lunds Fiji. Greetings to the 3 seniors as well." Only Han Dong was indifferent. He did not remove the disguise of the bird's beak mask, nor did he introduce himself. He just stood quietly at the back of the group. Lucius, this year, Commander Shea forcefully consumed the selection quota and selected the new knight? For a moment, the fallen knights were shocked. A trace of fear flashed in their eyes, but then they smiled. Blood vessels appeared on their faces. The effect of the blood wine was activated. So what if you are a genius? You have just joined the Knights and have not undergone formal training. You have not perfected the combat system. I didn't expect that after we disappeared, the Holy City would send a group of newbies to investigate the Aragad Mountains. I really don't know how the Holy City's retarded manager got to such a high position. As soon as he finished speaking, Knight Barrett from the Lionheart Knight Regiment exuded a sturdy force field from his body. His right hand pulled out the black crystal sword at his waist. His left arm was equipped with a giant shield made of a tortoise shell. Both tools came from the Destiny space, and the black crystal sword had reached the unique, purple, quality. The short sword made of black crystal could trigger the crystal cluster effect when it hit the target. The black crystal would cover the target's body, bringing a strong deceleration effect to the target and providing the user with crystal defense. The tortoise shell shield in his left hand had a very high physical block value and defense value. A ray of silver light covered the surface of Knight Barrett's body, increasing his physical defense and magic resistance characteristics. He was a pure defender and the iconic leader of the team. Unfortunately, his heart was depraved. At the same time, the strengthening of the blood wine had greatly improved his physical fitness. On the other hand, Bill, a mage from the Sorcerer Deity Knights, was a pure mage. He was dissatisfied with Lunds, who practiced necromancy. He believed that necromancy should not be classified as a library and should be placed in a strange department like the mystery department. He was a more standard elemental mage. 3 fireballs were floating behind him. It seemed that because of the effect of the blood wine, the fireballs had a faint red color and were endowed with a stronger explosive and annihilating power. As for the last knight Tiffany from the Wind Knights, he was born in the Crusaders, but he specialized in archery. In the Crusaders, he trained extraordinary agility and accurate shooting ability. A light blue longbow with a cloud imprint was taken from his back. There was no need for arrows. When Tiffany pulled the bow, he would draw the energy of his talent tree and combine it with the attributes of the bow to condense a kind of wind attribute arrow. Compared to ordinary arrows, it had a stronger penetrating and destructive power, and it could even shift during the flight. It was a strong and powerful long-range attacker. Before these 3 knights went missing, they were all well-regarded figures in the Knight Regiment. Unfortunately, they had been swallowed by desire. Chapter 480. Windwalker Tiffany released the bowstring, and a spiral-shaped air arrow shot straight at Lucius. The arrow stirred the air and continued to condense the wind attribute during its flight, further increasing its penetrating power. The moment the arrow was about to hit Lucius, crack, crack, a bone wall formed in front of Lucius. The point of impact formed an extremely strong air vortex. The bone wall was completely destroyed, but it did not injure Lucius, who was behind the bone wall. The bugle horn of battle also sounded with the release of this arrow. Come back to life, my army! Lunds, who was wearing bone armor, holding a bone shield, and holding a shadow short staff, waved the short staff in his hand, which was entwined with the death attribute, as though he was waving a flag. A gloomy and cold domain spread out from the soles of Lund's feet. More than 20 undead quickly formed under this domain. 16 of them were skeleton soldiers wielding serrated bone swords or heavy axes. 4 of them were a type of skeleton mage that floated in the air. Their bodies were covered in a transparent layer of armor and wielded a bone staff. They could release a type of highly corrosive shadow arrow. 1 person was an army. This was the strength of a necromancer. When Han Dong saw this scene of the undead reviving, he could not help but be shocked. Senior Lunds, who was in Stuart Manor, could only summon 2 or 3 skeletons at most. Now, he could summon a small army with a wave of his hand, and his aura was completely different. Is this the energy support provided by the tree? During battle, the energy it can provide is completely incomparable to seeds. The gap between an official knight and a trainee knight is too big. A true necromancer must have an extremely large amount of energy supply. Moreover, Senior Lunds seems to have some special characteristics that other necromancers do not have. It is precisely because of this that he was chosen by death god Alex in the night selection. Han Dong could still see a detail through the small magic eye. The bodies of these undead warriors were connected to Luan Zhe through a thin thread that was invisible to the naked eye. Once the skeleton's body was damaged in battle, it would be quickly reconstructed and regenerated through energy transmission. As long as Lunds did not die, the undead army would multiply endlessly. This little skeleton is just an ordinary evil creature. Bill, you seem to hate necromancers. I'll leave this guy to you. No problem. Tiffany, cooperate with me to deal with this blood esquire. The fellow who was selected second is worth the two of us to deal with. I will try my best to give you the best opportunity to attack. With your destructive power, this blood esquire won't be able to hold on if you hit him a few more times. Once he slows down, I'll use my strongest means to kill him. The tall and skinny archer with a goatee, Tiffany, nodded slightly, agreeing to the plan of 2 against 1. At the same time, he asked, Barrett, there's another person on the other side. How should we deal with him? He's just a cowardly rat who doesn't dare to announce his name. Judging from his attire, he's a mystic scholar. However, among the knights who graduated last year, among the top 10 chosen knights, there was only one mystic scholar. It was a masked female assassin. This man was not a threat at all. Additionally, judging from his chi, he was quite weak and didn't even look like a knight. While we're attacking Lucius, if you have time, shoot this guy with 2 arrows. It's best if you can kill him directly. All right. Barrett immediately used shield bash and sent the skeleton in front of him flying. He raised the black crystal sword in his right hand and clashed head-on with Lucius. Both of them were from the Crusaders, and Barrett specialized in swordsmanship and defense. He believed that he would have no problem facing this junior. The only thing Barrett needed to do was to fight for a long time and provide enough space for the archer to attack. However, clang. When the dark golden blood sword covered in blood vessels was held in Lucius's hand, the blood aura surged. A layer of blood cloak covered the surface of the sword. When Barrett's black crystal sword clashed with the blood sword, although there was not much difference in strength, Lucius's attacks were abnormally strange. Every time the swords clashed, the layer of blood cloak covering the surface of the blood sword would attempt to evolve into various shapes, or the mouth of a wild beast, or a thin and long spike, or a blood vessel with the ability to absorb. It attempted to bypass Barrett's defense and directly cause damage to his body. Barrett's self-cultivated defensive technique could be strengthened by the chi shield in his body and the blood wine. He could break through the blood cloak's attacks with a single jolt. But such a strange attack method disrupted Barrett's combat rhythm, causing his stamina to be depleted at 3 times the speed. This guy clearly didn't absorb the blood wine, but he can keep up with my strength and speed? He also has such a strange blood attack method. No wonder he was chosen second. Tiffany. Following Barrett's shout, the sound of wind breaking could be heard. 3 wind attribute arrows came from different directions with equally astonishing power. Blood hand, a trace of blood flashed in front of Lucius's eyes. The crimson armor on Lucius's body was called the Blood Curse armor. Due to Lucius's blood attribute, he had triggered a special hidden branch in a fate event. He had finally obtained this cursed armor in a large house filled with resentment and curses. The inner layer was a cortical structure that was one with Lucius's skin, causing the blood curse armor to homogenize with Lucius's body and fuse into one. All physical techniques could be directly released through the armor, and the armor itself would protect Lucius from harm. Once the armor was damaged, Lucius could use his blood to regenerate the armor. The armor was the physical body. Asterisk swish, 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 asterisk 3 bloody hands quickly grew out from the surface of the armor and grabbed at the 3 arrows. Blood rained down. The moment the blood hands came into contact with the arrows, they were immediately torn to shreds. Correspondingly, the wind element carried by the arrows was also cancelled out. Releasing the blood hand technique during the battle did not affect Lucius's head-on combat. When clashing with Barrett's sword technique, his momentum did not weaken at all. This guy. Jealousy arose in Barrett's heart. Lucius's talent, potential, and skills were clearly above his. This jealousy quickly turned into anger, intensifying the blood wine in his body. Blood vessels protruded from the surface of Barrett's skin, and the rhythm of the battle increased significantly. Lucius frowned slightly and tried his best to adapt to this rhythm. Captain Barrett should be able to slowly suppress his opponent under the state of blood activation. Let's get rid of the guy next to him first. Although he hasn't made a move yet, it's uncomfortable just standing there. Archer Tiffany saw that the situation was stable and chose to change target. She drew her bow even more. An arrow that stirred up a hurricane shot toward the mystic scholar, who had not moved since the beginning of the battle. It's within range. It's impossible to dodge. Die. Tiffany believed that she had killed the target in one shot and was delighted. However, the smile on her face froze in the next second. When the arrow touched the bird-beak doctor's clothes, it dissipated into a breeze. At the same time, the terrifying bird-beak mask slowly turned and stared at the archer with a strange gaze. Chapter 481. The Windwalker Knights were the long-range support unit of the 13th Knight. The requirements for recruiting knights were simple. They needed to be proficient in long-range attacks, possess superior shooting accuracy, be agile enough, and have keen observation skills. Usually, they would recruit archers from a crusader and control, or musketeers from machinery. Although they were all archers, knights who graduated from the crusaders were different from those who graduated from the control. Control was close to all things in nature. Archers were more inclined towards detection and agility. Archers who graduated from the crusaders were more hardcore. They focused on self-training and were extremely aggressive. Regardless of whether it was close-range shooting or long-range sniping, they were extremely aggressive. Moreover, when the enemy got close to them, they could still take out their backup swords to fight. Their physical skills were not bad at all. Tiffany, who graduated from the Crusaders, was the same. In addition, there was a certain amount of blood wine mixed in his body, making him extremely aggressive. However, when he was stared at by the beak mask, Tiffany felt a sense of fear, forcing him to retreat a distance. His eyes were filled with vigilance as he stared at this mysterious scholar of unknown identity. What happened? Why did my wind arrow disappear? Tiffany could not understand the situation just now. The wind arrow was supposed to hit its target. Why did it suddenly disappear when it got close to the opponent? The fear of the unknown caused a drop of cold sweat to flow down his forehead slowly. Tiffany, what are you doing? Help me get rid of this blood knight quickly. At this moment, his teammate Barrett roared, forcing Tiffany to come to his senses. He quickly drew his bow and provided shooting assistance. Just as the bowstring was pulled, Tiffany was stunned again. Due to his teammate's roar, Tiffany, who was slightly distracted, realized that the mysterious apprentice had disappeared. Where did he go? The uneasiness in his heart grew stronger. A primitive sense of fear was slowly evoked, forcing Tiffany to turn his head around in panic and search for traces of the mysterious person. The power of the blood sword and the crystal sword clashed. All sorts of fireballs bombarded the undead monster. Such an intense battle situation was not as stressful as the missing mysterious scholar on Tiffany. As an archer, his rhythm was obviously messed up. It was difficult for him to focus on cooperating with his teammates in battle. If he could not find this mysterious scholar, it would be difficult for him to join the battle. Blood. I want the power of blood. In the midst of her panic, the blood brew substance flowing in her body was activated. Drawing upon the powerful energy of the blood brew to strengthen his vision, veins of blood covered his eyes, and his pupils were completely filled with blood, turning into a deep red color. His vision had been completely improved. Is that sand? Tiffany discovered a detail. The area where the mystic scholar stood before had some yellow sand remaining. Residual energy. Could it be that it's hidden underground? Tiffany immediately gathered her strength in her calves, bent her knees and leaped into the air. Tiffany's flexible use of her wind attribute allowed her to jump nearly 8 meters high. Then, through a kind of wind-controlling ability, his body was temporarily suspended in the air. His eyes, which were filled with bloody light, were completely focused on the ground. At that moment, Tiffany was constantly worried that something terrifying would suddenly emerge from the ground or the walls. She had no time to assist the others. However, something dramatic happened. Just as Tiffany was trying to capture the enemy hiding in the ground, the mysterious apprentice who was dressed as a doctor with a bird's beak appeared in his previous position again, as if he was deliberately teasing the archer. Pretending to be mysterious? A feeling of being teased arose spontaneously, and anger rose from her heart. When she pulled the bow, a large amount of wind attribute energy was released, and immediately 3 spiral-shaped wind attribute arrows were formed on the bowstring. They shot rapidly towards the mysterious apprentice. Tiffany's anger temporarily suppressed her fear of the unknown, and she carefully observed the process of the arrows shooting. She wanted to see clearly how the arrows disappeared in front of the target. If she could find out the source of the problem, she could think of a way to avoid it the next time she shot. The mystic scholar's defense is generally weak. As long as I find the problem, with my shooting ability, I can definitely kill it in one shot. However, the situation changed again. Whoosh. The sharp arrow did not disappear. Instead, it successfully hit and penetrated the target's body. However, no blood flowed out. Caw. Crow's caw. What's going on? The mystic scholar's body disintegrated like a piece of paper, and black-headed crows drilled out from within. Hundreds of crows immediately flew towards Tiffany, who was floating in the air. The series of strange situations caused Tiffany of the Windwalker Knights to sink into a quagmire of fear. Even with the stimulation of the blood brew, there was still a trace of fear in his eyes. His rhythm was completely messed up, and he began to shoot the crows flying over randomly. And all this rhythm was in the hands of Han Dong. Through the unknown spiritual pressure, he disrupted the opponent's normal battle rhythm, allowing Han Dong to take advantage of the situation. As Tiffany's attention was completely attracted by the flying crows, his rhythm went wrong and his thoughts fell into chaos. Between the ceiling behind him, strands of yellow sand slowly flowed out and slowly formed a human figure behind Tiffany. She quietly placed her palm on the back of the head. Rumble. A tentacle ignored the protection of his skull and went straight into his brain. The last whisper was directly transmitted to the depths of Tiffany's brain. Senior, you've lost the most basic knight's faith in your endless greed. Once the battle goes out of control, you'll fall into fear. A lowly degenerate like you has no right to continue living. No, Tiffany had yet to unleash his true strength as a Windwalker Knight. Just as the wind energy overflowing his body was about to erupt, the white light immediately dimmed again. Thud. A corpse with a ferocious expression and pollution spots around its eyes fell heavily to the ground. Tiffany? When they saw their companion dead. In addition, the 2 fallen knights' minds were also in a state of chaos. Pyromancer Bill was distracted for a moment, and a skeleton soldier that suddenly revived got close to him. Lund seized the opportunity to use necromancy to strengthen this skeleton soldier one-on-one. The skeleton soldier that seemed frail and weak had a layer of dark blue flames burning all over its skeleton, and the bone sword in its hand spewed out a strong undercurrent. The skeleton opened its mouth wide, and let out a mournful roar that sounded like the depths of the underworld. A heavy shadow forcefully split open the magic shield around Bill's body. Whoosh. Red liquid scattered, and the right arm was cut off. For a mage who needed both hands to cast spells, the loss of an arm was quite fatal. The balance was off. Lunds further strengthened the resurrection effect, and the undead army endured all kinds of destructive fire magic surrounding the fallen pyromancer. Whoosh, one of the offerings was obtained. Chapter 482. Phew! I really did it. Knights with mental problems like these, as long as I gradually attack their hearts, I can make them reveal a huge flaw. Betraying the holy city is not a small matter, and these guys are scared to death. Before the battle, Han Dong, who was hiding at the back, had been observing this group of fallen knights. When Lucius and Lunds revealed their identities as knights, the three fallen knights' faces flashed with a trace of shock, and a sense of fear towards betrayal was undoubtedly revealed. It was precisely because of this that Han Dong chose to attack their hearts in another way. He would gradually break down their psychological defenses and kill them in one move. As for how to make the arrows disappear, the principle was very simple. If the opponent used a physical arrow, Han Dong would not be able to do it at all. However, this night Tiffany happened to be inclined towards the wind attribute. She combined her wind-type ability with her bow and crossbow equipment, thus abandoning her reliance on ordinary arrows. This kind of wind arrow was similar to a magic attack. Han Dong's little magic eye could clearly see the internal magic network and core. The moment the arrow approached, he used a small handful of sand needles that were almost invisible to the naked eye to quickly pierce the core of the arrow. The wind arrow disintegrated on its own. What remained was equivalent to a strong wind blowing on Han Dong's body, and it was relatively cooling. At that moment, the outcome of the magic duel on the other side was also decided. Han Dong could not help but marvel at Senior Lun's skills. Senior Lun's undead control is so great that he can summon a group of undead with a wave of his hand, and so small that he can strengthen and control a single skeleton soldier. His ability to kill a single skeleton soldier is completely at the standard of a normal knight, as expected of someone who was personally chosen by death to join the Order of Knights. Two of his companions were defeated. The Lionheart Knight Regiment's Barrett, who was facing Lucius head-on, had fallen into a state of panic. He, who was inclined towards defense, could not win in the situation where he lost two offensive teammates. Moreover, Sorcerer Bill's defeat was understandable. It was because of a momentary mistake that allowed the undead to find an opportunity. However, Archer Tiffany, who died first, was very strange. Barrett didn't even know how Tiffany had suddenly died. His mind was shaken, and his fighting spirit faded. Bang! The blood sword slashed down. Due to a mistake in the block, the black crystal sword in his hand flew out. Victory and defeat had been decided. Plop, at the moment of life and death, Barrett abandoned his last shred of dignity as a human and knelt before Lucius. No. Don't kill me. I became like this because I was bewitched by Count and forced to drink blood wine. I beg you to take me back. I am willing to accept any punishment from the knight's decree. However, just as Barrett said this, he immediately looked up at Lucius's gaze. There was no trace of pity in his blood-red eyes. The blood sword was already in the air. Lucius wasn't a kind, noble knight with the heart of a saint. He was an absolute executor, carrying out the orders of the knights and eliminating all dangerous existences that threatened humanity. In Lucius's eyes, a traitor like Barrett was dirtier than life outside the city. Swish, obtaining the offerings. The headless body fell backward. Just as the three of them were about to leave the area, a strange scarlet aura overflowed from the surface of the headless body. Barrett's headless body was disintegrating, and small bright red tentacles drilled out from under his skin. His overall vitality seemed to be stronger than when he was alive. Losing his human form. His insides have degenerated to such an extent. This guy has consumed much more blood wine than the other two traitors. relying on the knight's body to produce a corrupted life form. His strength is comparable to that of a hybrid demon. Be careful when dealing with him. Just as Lucius and Lenz were about to enter battle mode again, a black shadow flashed quickly. Han Dong rashly approached the degenerating headless body without any preparation. A metal-rimmed syringe appeared in his palm. The syringe pierced into the body and was gently pulled out. A syringe of blood wine essence was extracted from the syringe. The deformed body immediately shriveled, and in less than 5 seconds, it completely turned into a pile of powder. As for the syringe, Han Dong put it back into his body. The syringe used to collect cell essence could not be used on conscious individuals. Knight Barrett had been beheaded. The current mutation was only the result of the blood wine fermenting in his body. Before his consciousness was formed, he was still in a dead state. Taking advantage of this point, Han Dong decisively stepped forward and used the syringe to extract the blood wine essence fermenting in his body, erasing the danger. Although Lucius was shocked at how Han Dong did it, he immediately considered Han Dong's other identity and did not ask further. Well done. Lucius put his arm on Han Dong's shoulder. The breakthrough in this duel was created by Han Dong. Although Lucius did not know how Han Dong teased his opponent to death, Han Dong did it. Necromancer Lenz's attitude toward Han Dong had changed greatly. As he was controlling the undead from afar, he could clearly see Han Dong's mind attack technique and how Han Dong was messing with his opponent's mind step by step. Therefore, he put Han Dong on a special list in his mind. It's just that because Lucius and Senior Lenz are too famous, the other party paid too much attention to you and neglected my existence, giving me an opportunity to take advantage of it. Moreover, the seniors should have seen it too. This group of fallen knights was very afraid of their betrayal being exposed. When they found out that we were a team of knights, the fear in their hearts was expressed through their facial muscles. Using this point, they could seize the advantage and seize the opportunity. Han Dong made his sharing sound worthless and acted as a bootlicker to further increase their favorability. Only cowards would betray. A group of fellows who deserved more than death. They returned to the stone door passageway that required 3 offerings. When Senior Sister Jeanne stared at the offerings brought back by the 3 of them, she could not help but be stunned. After all, the 3 of them were experienced senior knights, and the battle did not seem to take too long. The offerings were embedded in the 3-headed groove on the surface of the stone door. The mark rotated. The stone door sank. It's different. Compared to the dark stone passageway that was similar to an ordinary ancient tomb, the stone passageway was scarlet red. The passageway behind the stone door was filled with a scarlet color. All kinds of soft, bright red, and nerve-like substances filled the passageway. Obviously, after passing through this passageway, the team would enter the deeper area of the Scarlet Mansion, where the royal blood brew was hidden. Let's go. Lucius stepped in without hesitation. Chapter 483. As Han Dong and the others passed through the red passage filled with scarlet objects, an open hall similar to a museum came into view. The main color was bright red. It was a ring-shaped structure about 5 meters tall. There were kerosene lamps that humans often used for illumination hanging on the wall, but the lampshade was a ghost-face structure. A large number of collections related to Scarlet were placed in glass cabinets and displayed to the outside world. The team arrived here. A long-faced woman who was more than 3 meters tall and had black hair floating in the air as if she wasn't affected by gravity was slowly walking over from the other side of the passage. She wore a red dress and held a kerosene lamp in her hand. The aura emitted from her body brought great pressure to everyone. However, such a woman seemed to be the manager of the museum. Her red lips curled up, and she had no hostility toward the group of people who came here. Congratulations, you are the first group of guests to come to the Scarlet House. I'm the person in charge here, Melissa Hiddenblood. The Crimson Mansion was a core region created by the Supreme Blood God. Apart from the ordinary collections, there were also 10 revered Crimson treasures. Since you arrived here first, you naturally have the right to choose the venerable grade first. Once you choose, you can't change it. One of you who first signed the blood offering contract will need to take the venerable grade to the final Crimson space to receive the blood brew. Only the correct venerable grade can receive the incomparably noble royal blood brew. Sure enough, Han Dong discovered a detail here in advance. When the group was first teleported to this alternate space, they were in the library. It seemed that they needed to decrypt and write down the correct words and array formation to escape the secret room. However, the essence of it was a contract ritual. Han Dong saw this on the spot. Thus, he got Lucius to write down the correct words and sign the contract. After Han Dong obtained Captain Lucius's permission, he politely continued to ask the manager, "Can the venerable grade be obtained directly?" "That's right. As long as you can identify the venerable grade, you can directly take it. The passage to the Crimson space is in the center of the museum. You can enter with the venerable grade. The Supreme Blood God is extremely generous. All the guests who participate in the banquet and hand in offerings to the Scarlet House will receive its favor. If the venerable grade you choose can't hold the royal family's blood wine, you'll also get a venerable grade high-grade blood wine." Han Dong continued to ask, "If other teams come here, will there be a conflict?" "This is the core area created by Lord Blood God, so no conflict is allowed. If anything is damaged, I will take the place of Lord Blood God and send down the blood judgment." One last question. If only those who signed the contract can enter the Crimson space, what about the rest of us? The other members will pass through the portal in my body and return to the place where you first came from. The local count will continue to receive you and enjoy the banquet and delicacies that have already been prepared, waiting for the return of the people who signed the contract. Alright. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. I will wander around the museum irregularly and continue to wait for other visitors. After saying that, the tall and skinny librarian continued her inspection and soon disappeared into the other end of the museum. Looking at the quiet and elegant bright red museum, the group of people who were already prepared for battle found it hard to adapt. After all, the outer regions had always been in a tense state. Decryption, traps, and life and death struggles. Now that they had entered the deeper region, the team was told that this was an absolute safe zone. As long as they found the right venerable grade, they would get the blood wine. Even if they found the wrong one, they would still get a consolation prize. The sudden peace and safety made the team a little uncomfortable. "Let's walk around and take a look." At Lucius's suggestion, the team walked around the museum in a brisk manner to get a general understanding of the overall structure and preliminary observation of the exhibits here. As the librarian said, the venerable grade was mixed in with the ordinary exhibits. Its quality and the blood aura it emitted were completely different from the ordinary exhibit. Han Dong could recognize it at a glance, and Lucius could also identify it through his blood sensing. The final conclusion was exactly the same, confirming 10 venerable grade items with special structures. Moreover, Han Dong and Lucius's choice was exactly the same. Putting aside the characteristics of large size and exquisite workmanship, the venerable grade containers that were truly used to hold the royal family's blood wine must be small and have a certain uniqueness and symbol. In the end, the two of them chose a small object. Living mouth wine cup. In the display cabinet, there was a row of exquisite wine cups with openings shaped like human lips. Upon closer inspection, one would find that the wine cups were alive, and the lips even moved slightly. The surface of the cup was also engraved with an image of the sun and moon competing in brilliance, which seemed similar to the origin of the curse in Lucius's body. Since they had made their choice, they no longer hesitated to avoid being chosen by other teams. After Lucius took the wine cup from the display cabinet, Han Dong hurriedly handed over a key inlaid with a blood diamond. Captain Lucius, I obtained this key by accident in the previous checkpoint. Perhaps there are many rooms where the royal family's blood wine is stored, and the room where the royal family's blood wine is stored is hidden in the dark. This key can help you reach it smoothly. As for how to use it, it's up to you. Okay, when Lucius took the key, it meant that once he obtained the royal family's blood wine, he would owe Han Dong a huge favor. Bring the venerable grade. Lucius detoured to the center of the museum and went through a passage overflowing with red water to the final blood wine area. Everyone, go back and wait for the good news from your captain. Thank you again for participating in the Red Banquet, arranged by Lord Bloodgod. I hope that those who failed to sign the contract can continue to participate in the next Red Banquet. The administrator lifted the red robe. A portal that symbolized the exit of the alternate space appeared in the administrator's body. A familiar feeling of nausea greeted him. Han Dong and the others safely returned to the main hall of Scarlet Mountain Villa. Because they were the first team to complete the banquet, the main hall area was currently empty. Even Count was still acting as a patroller in the alternate space. Senior Zhen, I'll leave the infiltration operation discussed the night before to you. Captain Lucius, how high can you reach in one fell swoop depends on whether you can successfully infiltrate. Senior Zhen did not respond and immediately merged into the shadows. At the same time, Many Zhe Crow quickly returned to Stuart Manor and give this letter to Elder Meetzi. Caw in the form of a crow, the Many Zhe Crow quickly left the main hall and flew out of Scarlet Mountain Villa's territory. Next, let's see if Captain Lucius can come out on top. Chapter 484. Han Dong then arranged for Senior Sister Zhen and the Dozier Crow to perform their respective duties. After a while, the second team returned to the mansion. They were the Baron team that directly belonged to Scarlet Mountain Villa. Currently, there was a Baron who was still inside. He was heading to the Crimson Mountain Villa with a venerable item to search for the noble royal blood brew. It was necessary to introduce a few capable people in Scarlet Mountain Villa. After all, Han Dong's next plan would directly conflict with them. The first White Ghost Baron was the Baron that Han Dong first came into contact with on the mountain. A large number of pale blood corpses that suffered from thirst were raised in the manor. They were paranoid and crazy, and they had an irresistible dependence on blood brew. The entire manor was even more chaotic. The White Ghost's appearance was that of an old man who was paralyzed in a wheelchair. Due to his severe thirst and albinism, he looked no different from a corpse. However, such a weak and sickly image made Han Dong feel an incomparable amount of danger. The second Baron of Wild Feast was also the head chef of Scarlet Mountain Villa. His essence was that of an insect. He was above a human and below a worm. There was a huge sawtooth mouth in the middle of the fat belly of the upper body. The lower half of his body was completely the body of a worm, white, translucent, fat, and bloated. The third Red Eagle Baron was the female Baroness among the 6 Baronesses. She was also the Baron that looked the closest to a human in terms of appearance and form. She was wearing dark red tights with some light armor pieces embedded on the outside. A blood eagle stood on her shoulder. There were 2 short swords on her waist and a longbow on her back. She wore a mask with a maniacal laugh imprint on her face. Only a blood-red eye could be seen. She stared at the night squad that had returned earlier than the Baron team. The 4th Tomb Baron was also in charge of the disposal of the corpses in the manor. After all the lives in Scarlet Mountain Villa had a great desire for blood brew. If they wanted to manage it well, they could only use extreme methods. Killing the chickens to warn the monkeys had to be used frequently. In addition, the villa would often recruit new members. As the population increased, the number of dead would also increase correspondingly. Someone had to use these corpses alive. This old man with silver-framed glasses was the main person in charge of the aftermath. The aura he emitted was similar to Senior Brother Lun's, but there was an additional layer of plague aura. The 5th Baron Bat, Among the barons, he was the only hybrid demon who did not have any human characteristic. In essence, it was a giant black bat. When its wings were fully spread out, it could reach a width of 4 meters. The inner side of the black wings was covered with bat eyes, which could greatly enhance its vision. At the same time, it could use such dense amounts of eyes to contaminate other life forms. At the same time, he was also the leader of the scouts in the villa. The 6th Baron Bloodbag was both Scarlet Mountain Villa's doctor and Count's personal doctor. It was a man wrapped in a white coat with a mask on his face. His eyes emitted a strong blood-red luster. Through the white coat, one could vaguely see the blood transfusion bag hidden under the coat. That's right, it was the blood transfusion bag used in the hospital to store blood. It hung all over the inside of the white coat. It seemed that this doctor had the real responsibility of a doctor in the Baron's team, supplying blood to others. Perhaps it was because of his relationship with Count, but there was also a certain amount of blood wine mixed in the medical blood, which could provide medical treatment while strengthening the blood of the bloodkin. The above was the 6th Baron of Scarlet Mountain Villa. Among them, the one chosen to go to Crimson House to search for the royal blood wine was not the White Ghost Baron, that Han Dong thought was the most dangerous, but the Baron Bloodbag, Count's personal doctor. While waiting, Demps leaned his head slightly toward Han Dong and whispered in his ear, "Nicholas, don't go overboard." Demps could vaguely see some of the things behind the scenes through the various means that Han Dong had set up. "Demps, when Captain Lucius leaves Scarlet Mountain Villa, you can choose to leave. What happens next has nothing to do with you. Of course, if Brother Deng wants to follow, it's not a problem." Hearing this, Demps was even more certain of his inference. Cold sweat slid down Demps's cheeks, who had always been calm. "Don't tell me you want to," Han Dong responded to Demps with a secret smile at the corner of his mouth. "In short, you can leave if you want to. What happens next has nothing to do with you. However, Abel, Lucius, and the others should be involved." "Okay, let me think about it." Demps leaned back in his seat, crossed his legs, and entered a meditative state. He seemed to be thinking about how he should make the next choice and how to get the best solution. At the same time, Demps's 6th finger separated from the main body without anyone noticing. Some tentacles wrapped in seaweed grew from the root of the finger, transformed into a shape similar to a starfish, and sneaked out of the mansion. After completely leaving the manor, this finger directly transformed into a true clone of Demp. He walked on the wind, crossed layers of the blood forest, and arrived at the edge of the cliff. A strange wooden house that was pieced together on the cliff seemed to have been waiting here for a long time. As Demps approached, the wooden door opened. "Mother, my friend is preparing to." Demps told all his confirmed speculations to the mysterious existence in the wooden house. The main hall of the mansion. Ever since the Baron's team returned, no team left Scarlet Mountain Villa. About half an hour passed. It was accompanied by the roars of wild beasts. Count, who was holding 3 terrifying pets by the chains in his hands, also stepped out of the teleportation door. This also meant that out of the 11 teams that had participated in the Red Banquet, only the Knights team and the Baron's team had survived. As for the others, they were either trapped in the secret chamber, died in a trap, or were torn to pieces by the Count's 3 pets. "Ha ha, as expected of the Lord of Stuart. Your speed is actually faster than the Baron under my command. Next, let's see who will be able to obtain the final blood brew." Count's eyes shone with a strange brilliance. He seemed to have great confidence that his personal doctor would be able to take the lead in this banquet. Time passed little by little. The Dozier Crow flew back from outside the window, spitting out an important piece of paper from its mouth, and handed it to Han Dong. "It's here." The teleportation door suddenly burst forth with an intense crimson luster. A majestic voice resounded through the main hall, and even Count could only lower his head, temporarily suppressing the wild laughter in his body. "The Scarlet Lord has been awarded to the Blood Knight from the Holy City, Lucius Totha. As soon as these words were spoken, Han Dong and Count's expressions immediately showed two polar opposites. It was also at this moment Han Dong took out the important piece of paper and raised his voice. Count Bokdarin, the signatory of the title deed of Scarlet Mountain Villa, I hereby initiate the title deed war against you. According to the decree set by the old king, you will not be able to refuse this battle. In Han Dong's hand was the title deed that symbolized the Stuart Manor, and it was branded with the yellow seal that symbolized a certain old king. Chapter 485. The land covered by the eternal night was divided and given to different old kings according to their level. The title deed was used as a symbolic proof of ownership of the land. Of course, the title deed was not only a proof of land use rights, but it also directly stated that the area was directly under the old king's protection. At the same time, it was also a symbol of identity. The owner or spokesperson of the title deed would be called the Lord. Because of this, Han Dong was warmly invited by Scarlet Count because of his identity as the Lord. The Red Banquet was a banquet held by the Blood God. The main purpose was to recruit people with blood affinity in the world to join the Blood God's family and become one of the Lord. For this Red Banquet, Laughing Count Bokdarin was only the person in charge of the banquet. He was required to invite as many people as possible to participate in the Red Banquet. Han Dong participated in the banquet as a unique lord, so the Blood God would give Count an additional commission. The more people were invited, the more rewards Count could receive from the Blood God. This was also one of the reasons why Han Dong was sure that there was absolutely no danger during his stay in Scarlet Mountain Villa. At the same time, he could also receive special treatment from Count. However, in any case, Han Dong's purpose was determined from the beginning. As long as Blood Knight Lucius could take the lead at the banquet, Han Dong would not hesitate to directly launch the title deed war, a directional battle recognized by all the old kings. Han Dong already knew all the information about the title deed, the power he could use, and the treatment he could enjoy when he became the Lord. Title deed war. This was a special power that the Lord had. The following three conditions must be met at the same time to initiate the title deed war as the initiator. 1. The initiator must be the Lord and carry the title deed with him. 2. The initiator must be in the target territory, the area covered by the target title deed. 3. The Lord of the target title deed must also be in the area covered by the title deed. Currently, Han Dong held the title deed of Stuart Manor and was in Scarlet Mountain Villa. The owner of the manor's title deed, Count Bokdarin, was also present. All the conditions were met. When Han Dong issued this battle request, the target lords could not refuse and had to accept it. In such a war, the stake would be the title deed. The winner would obtain the loser's title deed, and the loser would completely become the winner's slave. After all, if a feudal lord couldn't even protect his own title deed, he would lose the right to live. In fact, all the feudal lords were well aware of the conditions of war. Under normal circumstances, they would avoid meeting other lords as much as possible. For example, they would choose to meet and converse with other lords in areas other than their own manors, rather than meeting other lords in their own manors. But Han Dong, this lord, was really not that great. In the eyes of any lord, they wouldn't treat him as a dangerous person, nor would they think that he would participate in a land deed war. In terms of strength, Han Dong was only a novice knight. In terms of manor level, Han Dong's Stuart Manor only corresponded to a small title deed, which was one level lower than Count's Scarlet Mountain Villa. Moreover, Count had already asked his subordinate, Bat Baron, to go to Stuart Manor to investigate the basic situation during the few days when Han Dong stayed in Scarlet Mountain Villa. The Crowman tribe was stationed there, and there were no mature hybrid demons. In such a situation, Han Dong actually took the initiative to start a war. In anyone's eyes, it was almost a free gift. When the words land deed war reached Count's ears, he thought that he had misheard. While staring at the title deed in Han Dong's hand, Count, who was depressed because his baron didn't get the royal blood brew, cracked a crazy smile. You are crazier than me? Giving me a title deed is even more satisfying than having a viscount as a servant. Ahahaha. Count's crazy laughter echoed in the area. Han Dong replied with a calm face. Count Bok treated us with great hospitality and finally gave a bottle of royal blood brew to my friend. Giving a title deed doesn't matter. But since the war has already started, please take out the title deed, Count. Use 2 titles to draw out the battle space, and quickly start the war. Count reached out and touched the cone-shaped goggles around his eyes, and said with a grin, By the way, Lord Nicholas, do you really think that some crowmen in your small manor can fight against my Scarlet Mountain Villa? Of course they can't. The battle has started, and there is an hour to prepare. Since everyone has just left Scarlet Mountain Villa, it is necessary to take a little rest. After 45 minutes, everyone will gather in the front yard. How about it? Okay. It just so happened that Han Dong needed some time to communicate with his teammate. Of course, when Han Dong shouted the words, title deed war, other than Demps, who had expected and accepted this fact in advance, everyone else thought that Han Dong was crazy. Abel, are you ready to deal with that bastard? I'm ready, but... No buts, just deal with that bastard. You don't have to worry about anything else. Abel completely trusted Han Dong and nodded in agreement. At this moment, Senior Zhen returned, and the secret matter was settled. After hearing that Han Dong had started the war, she immediately understood what was going on. If you want to die, don't drag us down with you. Just as Han Dong was about to reply to Senior Zhen, a strong blood aura overflowed from the teleportation door, and a completely changed Blood Knight walked out from inside. The strength of the aura he emitted was incomparable to before. Han Dong hurriedly congratulated, Congratulations, Captain Lucius, for completely mastering the royal blood brew and conferring a noble title. What's the situation here? Lucius asked when he saw that everyone's expressions were not too good. After learning that Han Dong had issued a title deed war to Scarlet Count as an overlord, Lucius asked with a calm expression, How confident are you? How confident are you? I'm only 20% confident, but with Captain Lucius's help, it can be more than 50%. You led us to Scarlet Mountain Villa, made me sign the contract, and arranged for me to obtain the blood brew, as expected of Mr. Black and White's student. I, Lucius Tother, am willing to help. Since their captain had joined the battle, naturally, Lunz and Zhen couldn't abandon their captain and escape Aragad mountain range alone. Thank you for your help, Senior Zhen. What about you, Demps? Demps took a deep breath and slowly gestured the number 1. Phew. All right. But I have a condition. If we win the war, my name has to be written on the second signature of the title deed. Sure. However, I also have a condition. I need you, Demps, to help me stall the Watcher sent by the Blood God, who is also the butler of Scarlet Mountain Villa. Chapter 486. As Demps nodded in confirmation, Han Dong could finally let go of the heavy burden in his heart. Ever since he knew the background of this butler, Han Dong had been hypothesizing all kinds of conditions to deal with this monitor sent by the Blood God. His true strength might be above Count's. The best solution was Demps. Han Dong was very clear about one thing. Demps's power and background outside the city was definitely big enough. Every time he just needed to send Demps to the edge of the cliff in the Garn Forest, there would be construction personally coming to pick him up. As long as Demps was willing to help, this matter would most likely be settled. When he received an affirmative answer from Demps, Han Dong was completely relieved. As for the conditions, the value of the second signature was far less than the first signature. After all, the first signature was related to the corresponding Old King's seal. The title deed would still be managed by the old king in the yellow robe. Demps would only have the access authority and a little change authority. It would not affect the overall transfer and basic use of the title deed at all. Using Demp's name on the title deed in exchange for eliminating a major threat, Han Dong was quite happy. Thank you all for your help. I will use all my chips to win this battle. Since all the teammates had been arranged, Han Dong immediately summoned the Dozier Crow. At this moment, the cowardly crow became more reliable and did not tremble in fear. Perhaps it was because Han Dong had given the heavy responsibility of delivering the title deed to it, which caused the Dozier Crow's temperament to change to a certain extent. Naturally, there was no problem with the Crowman Elder. Han Dong needed to confirm the situation with Dr. Swollen. What did Dr. Swollen say? Go back and bring people. Dr. Swollen said he is fully prepared and can maximize the output. Very good. Now, Han Dong had thrown out all his chips. Next, it would depend on how much power counts Scarlet Mountain Villa had. In the sky above the Garn Forest, thousands of crowmen hovered and screeched as they prepared for the battle. 20 minutes before the battle, Lucius pulled Han Dong aside for a private conversation. Assuming that the military strength is equal, how do you plan to deal with Count? Do you need my help? Lucius, who had obtained the royal blood brew, exuded a strong scarlet aura as he spoke. The overall pressure he brought was not like that of a novice who had just joined the Order of Knights. Using the scarlet curse that he inherited and his own powerful abilities, he forcibly resisted the side effects of the royal blood brew and used it all for self-improvement. Not only had his basic strength improved, but it seemed that even Lucius's blood-kill tree had undergone fundamental changes due to the blood wine. The blood-stained color on the tree became purer, and it even bore bright red fruits. This was all thanks to Han Dong's push. This was also why Lucius had chosen to assist Han Dong without hesitation. Of course, as the captain and the genius who was second in line to be selected into the Order of Knights, Lucius had secretly spied on some things. Han Dong must have a purpose for assisting him. However, Lucius did not expect Han Dong's ambition to be so great that he wanted to swallow the entire Scarlet Mountain Villa. Unexpectedly, just as Lucius proposed to take the initiative to deal with Scarlet Count, Han Dong quickly waved his hand. Captain Lucius, please leave the Scarlet Earl to me alone. Also, tell Senior Sister Jeanne and Senior Brother Luan Zhe not to give any help. Captain Lucius only needs to keep an eye on those barons and the hidden trouble in Scarlet Mountain Villa. Don't let it affect my battle with Count. Alone, Lucius immediately read the key message in this sentence, and the usually reserved Blood Knight's eyes flashed with surprise. Don't tell me you want to? That's right. If you want to do it big. Time was up. Han Dong held the title deed and met with Count in the front yard. When the two title deeds that belonged to different old kings came into contact with each other, it immediately tore open a giant spatial rift with an extremely strong suction force. Everything related to the two title deeds was sucked into it. For a moment, the Stuart Manor in the Gaines Forest had completely disappeared, leaving behind only a desolate open space that was surrounded by a barrier. Scarlet Manor, which had just been moved to the Aragad Mountains, also disappeared, leaving only a blood-red forest. Lucius and his group had been in contact with Han Dong and had been marked in advance. They were all judged to be on Han Dong's side and were brought in. Gray sky. A few skeletons, broken swords, and axes were scattered on the desolate and dilapidated white land. Two manors that symbolized the title deeds appeared out of thin air on the north and south sides of the desolate area. They were separated by about 5,000 meters and were purely used as battlefield. The people belonging to both sides appeared in their respective territories. 30 minutes of preparation time was given to the lords to arrange their troops. There were only 3 ways to win the title deed war. 1. One side's lord voluntarily surrenders. 2. One side's lord has less than 20% of his troops remaining, while the other side has more than 70% of their troops remaining. 3. The lord dies. Within the Stuart Manor. Led by the 7 crowmen elders, all of them crouched in front of Han Dong and listened to his battle instructions. The scene of nearly 1,000 crowmen submitting shocked Lucius and his group. It was hard to imagine that the one leading these crowmen was a novice knight who had yet to graduate from the Knight Academy. Lord Messenger, the crowmen tribe is ready for a full-scale battle. Whoosh, a black feather cloak was completely unfolded behind Han Dong. 2 circles of black scriptures rotated in his palm. A staff that no one had ever seen before was slowly leaving Han Dong's body when the staff appeared. A ripple-like black halo slowly spread out from under Han Dong's feet. All of the crowmen crouching on the ground were strengthened by this halo, and their fighting spirit increased. Great Elder Lancia also felt his teacher's presence from this halo. After a while, the staff completely appeared. The lower end was a black wooden staff with mushrooms growing on its surface. Occasionally, a ghostly shadow would appear around it. There was even a faint dark glow inside the staff. The upper end was an exquisite staff with a crow head that looked like a living creature. The black feathers were soft and smooth, and the whole body was emitting black smoke. The crow's eyes were like 2 beautiful gems, emitting a bright color. It seemed to be made from the corresponding energy crystal of the lighthouse's origin. When this staff was used, Lucius's group was shocked. Senior Luns, who had graduated from the library, even showed a hint of greed, epic-grade weapon. Combining the 2 characteristics of fate and chaos. Nicholas, where did you get it? This kind of weapon was very rare even among the knights, but it appeared in the hands of a novice knight. Chapter 487. Raven Type, Polearm Staff Acquired. Undead Body Creation Quality. Epic, Pink, Material Usage Frowny Face Staff Head, Raven's Heart, Epic, Semi-Living Material. Staff Body, Ghost Face Demonic Wood, Epic, Dark Fate Material. Energy Crystal, A Lighthouse's Source. Epic, Dark, Converted, Fate Material, Basic Attributes. 1. Greatly increases the user's mana limit, increases the user's affinity and damage to black magic. 2. Black magic cast through the staff has a certain probability of ignoring the target's magic resistance. Equipment Effect Frowny Face Crowman Affinity. Allows the wielder to form a deep bond with the crowmen, reducing repulsion and energy consumption during the bond period, increasing the user's mobility during the bond state. Undercurrent. Every time a black magic is cast, 1 layer of undercurrent will be accumulated. Undercurrent. Casting speed increase by +2%, 0. 25% chance of increasing the base level of the spell cast. Can increase casting speed by up to 60%, 7. 5% chance of increasing the spell level. Ghost Shield. Changes the wielder's magic shield to cover the ghost face effect. Ghost Face. Increases magic defense, has a certain probability of absorbing black magic, witchcraft, and dark elemental elements and turning them into energy for the magic shield. Has a certain disruption effect. Exclusive Special Effect Frowny Face Crowman Lord Aura LV. 1. Increases the movement speed of surrounding friendly units by a certain margin, about 10 to 15%, double for crowmen, affects a range of 1,000 meters. Aura level can be increased together with the staff. Signed. The staff belongs to the Lord of Stuart Manor, Yellow Messenger V. Nicholas. I am the crows, I am the crows. This was a weapon that Han Dong forged using all his destiny points, borrowing all his connections in reality, using ghost stories, Lighthouse as the core, using the Crowman Elder as the furnace and the Black Citron Warthog as the energy supply. An epic staff. It was flawless. Even an official knight in the Holy City would have a hard time obtaining a weapon of this quality. Furthermore, even with epic materials, it was not guaranteed that a perfect epic weapon could be forged. The forging process was extremely difficult, and the slightest mistake could damage the materials and cause the quality of the finished product to drop. Once the staff appeared, the Crowmen army's morale increased by another level. "Lord Emissary, please allow me, Lancia, to lead the strongest group of Crowmen in a frontal assault. Elder Lance is too impatient, this battle won't be that easy. It's very difficult for the Crowmen to gain the upper hand in a frontal assault. Elder Mizia, lead 13 twin-headed Crowmen who are adept at life extraction and step forward." Yes. The Mitzi Crow was different from the Lance Crow, which was good at close combat. Mizia was the Crowman elder who gave Han Dong the life drain spell. Following Han Dong's request, he brought 13 of his Crowmen disciples with him. "In the first battle, you guys will work together with Dr. Swollen's product. Let's give Count a big present." "Yes. The other elders, please start preparing for battle. Scarlet Count is an extreme existence that walks on the edge of madness. If the progress of the war is different from what he expected, or even if the difference is huge, he will not hesitate to attack. It might cause Count to go completely crazy in his anger and risk all his chess pieces. At that time, the elders will need to go all out to suppress him. My knight companions will also provide strong combat assistance to deal with the hybrid demons in the Scarlet Manor." "Yes." Han Dong opened his little magic eye and looked into the distance. A group of about 100 fully armed elite blood descendants stepped out of the Scarlet Manor together with the Tomb Baron. At the same time, due to the special nature of the Tomb Baron, when they stepped out of the manor, the dead blood descendants with bright red fungus all revived in the graveyard, numbering in the thousands. Each of them had 80% of their attributes from when they were alive. The stronger ones had a lower percentage. At the same time, they were also covered with the characteristic of blood plague. When they attacked, they could infect the target and cause bleeding and vulnerability. Count's idea was very good. In the first battle, they mainly used these unimportant dead to spread the blood plague, as much as possible. Not only could they infect the enemy troops, they could also use these useless dead to gain a rough understanding of the enemy's overall strength. In addition, once the blood plague spread out, the 100 elite blood descendants mixed in with the Tomb Baron would be able to easily defeat the enemy's first unit and force their way to the Stuart Manor's gate. Count was sitting on the roof of the manor, quietly watching the battle. Although it was the first time for Count to participate in a land deed battle. But Count himself had invaded many areas with the mobile land deed in his hands, so he had a unique understanding of invasion. He believed that he could easily defeat the lord corresponding to this small land deed. As the Stuart Manor's gate was fully opened, Count sat up with a little interest. He wanted to see what kind of troops this young lord would send out in the first battle. A young man with no experience in war, will he send his entire army over from the start? That's fine too. Let your crowmen attack. The scene of a flock of crows crying out in pain must be very good. Just like a flock of little quails that have just entered a pot of oil, haha. However, Count's wild laughter immediately stopped in the next second, and it was replaced by a look of doubt. Is Lord Nicholas really planning to give away the land deed? Only 14 crowmen flew out of the Stuart Manor's gate. Although there was a hybrid demon mixed in with them, such a force was not enough to fight against Count's army of 1,000. However, in an area that Count couldn't see, it was the Stuart Manor's underground laboratory, where the living containment pods had already been opened. Dr. Swollen used something similar to a toilet bowl to rub his giant brain, ensuring that his brain was awake and his mind was highly focused. One of the main reasons why Han Dong dared to directly clash with the Scarlet Manor was because of Dr. Swollen. Dr. Swollen was Han Dong's biggest gain after taking the land deed from the ghouls. The distance between the two armies was less than 1,000 meters. Just as the 14 crowmen were about to clash with the Scarlet Manor's army of 1,000, the earth trembled. A large number of cracks appeared on the ground of the gray-white battlefield, connecting to an underground passage. Ah! Waves of wild roars came from the underground area. Sharp claws and thick arms. Sharp teeth and long tongues. Gelatinous skin. Nearly 1,000 ghouls stretched out their arms, crawling out from the ground. Ghouls? A descendant left behind by the original Stuart Lord. How could such a lowly demon be able to directly clash with my blood-descendant army? What a naive and young lord. Count didn't put these ghouls in his eyes at all. However, in the instant when the two armies clashed, the situation was reversed in less than 10 seconds. Large numbers of blood-kin corpses died, and the army was utterly defeated. Han Dong smiled, quietly admiring the results of his private collaboration with Dr. Swollen. Chapter 488. The blood-kin corpses that the Tomb Baron is in charge of have retained the strength they had when they were alive. Why is this so? The smile on Count's face froze. He stood up from his chair and observed the ghoul army that was suppressing the blood-kin corpses. It was a strange group of ghouls that he had never seen before. The former Arab ghoul Duilio Stewart had also devoted himself to the research of ghouls, but he had mainly focused on the research of numbers. Professor Swollen, who was in charge of this project, had completely grasped the technology of reproduction and rapid cultivation. After Han Dong took over, he immediately made changes to the laboratory. Although Han Dong also wanted to establish an alchemy laboratory and earn a large sum of money, after knowing that Demps could earn tens of thousands of copper coins with just a flick of his finger, Han Dong's idea of earning money was greatly weakened. At the same time, because he knew some of the rules of the land deed, Han Dong also wanted to strengthen the foundation and strength of the manor. It was not suitable to recruit outside forces like the Scarlet Mountain Villa. The Stuart Manor only corresponded to a small land deed, and there was a limit to it. For example, the manor could only house newborn hybrid demons, and there could not be more than 8 of them. If he wanted to strengthen the foundation and strength of the manor, Han Dong could only walk the path of experimentation. Professor Swollen was an excellent breakthrough. Han Dong stared at the battlefield, and when he saw the ghoul army crushing the blood-kin corpses, he could not help but laugh maniacally. My ghouls are not inferior ghouls. They are all ghouls cultivated from optimal embryos, and they have even surpassed the concept of ghouls to a certain extent. From the time he took over the manor until now, Han Dong and Professor Swollen had cooperated and discussed a total of 3 optimizations for the ghouls. First, in the movie Ghost Stories, Han Dong had successfully implanted the death row inmate gene into the embryos, and the resulting ghouls had the monstrous strength and innate fighting skills of a death row inmate. The ghouls in the white battlefield were completely different from the monsters in the cemetery that everyone thought of as beasts. Dodging, parrying, and counterattacking were basic combat techniques that almost every ghoul was proficient in, and they could use them flexibly in battle. Some of the ghouls who still had their claws were like spearmen when they attacked. They used their claws to pierce through the enemy quickly, and then they used all sorts of kicks to attack their target. There were also some ghouls that looked like humans, and they even walked on 2 legs when they moved. He displayed his superb fighting skills in the battle, continuously throwing jabs, swings, and straight punches at the blood descendants from all directions. These fist ghouls would transform their claws into a layer of carapace around their fists, increasing their punching power and destructive power. Their bodies could even slide to dodge and change the direction of their attack. The second level was to combine a small amount of the G-virus and the strengthening effect of the parasite in the Joker's Resurrection. The ghouls' regeneration and bodily functions would be improved in all aspects, allowing them to unleash the combat techniques within their bodies to the greatest extent. Broken tendons, blood vessels, and muscles could be quickly reconnected, not affecting their movements at all. They were able to fight for a long time on the battlefield. The third level. This was the fundamental reason why Han Dong believed that the ghoul army could fight against the blood descendants head-on. Dr. Swollen found some remains of the big ghoul deep in the ruins of the manor. The metal skeleton structure that originated from MO was successfully extracted by the doctor. Special alloy plus steam technology plus non-repellent body compatibility technology. Dr. Swollen connected this structure to his brain, and his body was improved in all aspects. Han Dong raised a question. Could he try to replicate this metal skeleton structure and graft it on the ghouls in the blastocyst? If it could be done, the ghouls would all have an internal driving structure, and thus create a type of imitation big ghoul. Due to Demp's financial support, Han Dong purchased a batch of alloys and miniature steam hydraulic devices in the Holy City and gave them to Dr. Swollen for research. He then brought the research report to Mechanic and discussed it with Koslin, who used to be Cass's friend. In the end, they developed a set of metal skeleton structure that was suitable for ghouls. The imitation rate was about 70%, and it could be successfully implanted into the ghouls' bodies. After the above 3 modifications were completed, the mass production plan was realized in about 2 months, and Han Dong asked for the best selection, directly discarding the ghouls that did not meet the requirements. "Sir Messenger, how do you feel?" "Well, at least the first battle is not a problem. It can basically mess up all of Count's plans. The suppression brought by the ghoul army is also within my expectations. After all, I have invested a lot of energy in this matter." Dr. Swollen continued. "However, it is still difficult to make this group of inferior races the core force. When do you plan to let the key creatures in the laboratory go to the battlefield? I can't wait to personally lead them to battle. Also, I have been in the laboratory for too long, and I am preparing to exercise my brain. Maybe I can even collect some suitable blood descendants for experiments. It would be best if I can obtain high-purity blood wine. No rush. Count hasn't used his pet collection room yet. When I need you to appear, I will naturally inform you. During this time, collect data underground." Okay. The ones who came to the surface to communicate with Han Dong were only the communication ghouls used by Dr. Swollen. The doctor himself had to monitor the movements of the experimental subjects in the laboratory at all times, as well as the changes in their body indexes during the battle, so that further optimization could be carried out after the battle. He stared at the ghoul army that was slaughtering everyone on the battlefield. Lucius and the others were shocked again. Even Demps was shocked. He didn't expect Han Dong to be able to enhance these low-level evil creatures to this extent through experimental means. In the later stages of the battle, this group of ghouls could even fight evenly with the 100 fully armed elite blood descendants sent by Scarlet Mountain Villa, and then suppress them through the advantage of numbers. Once the target lost the ability to move, the ghoul's instinct would be activated, and the corpse would be destroyed in an instant. At this moment, Han Dong began to give orders. "Elder Mizia, prepare to use the secret technique of life to directly use Tomb Baron. With you as the leader, the 13 crowmen should be able to cast spells at the same time. They should be able to seriously injure or even kill the opponent." "Okay." Han Dong sent out Mizia with this goal in mind. Life black magic restrained this Tomb Baron that controlled the dead. 2 elders, sneak into the war zone secretly. If there are any changes, immediately send Elder Mizia back. The 2 crowmen elders who leaned towards the wind attribute immediately moved out. Han Dong held the staff with both hands and looked at the manager of Scarlet Mountain Villa. "Count, how will you deal with this situation?" Chapter 489. The initial forces were forced to retreat again, and even the elite blood descendants were injured. Count, who was standing at the top of Scarlet Manor, showed a ferocious expression. His left hand frantically clawed at the wound on his right wrist where the silver cross was inserted. Drip, 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 blood dripped from the wound. "My lord, please calm down. We only lost some useless corpses. It was the personal doctor, Baron Bloodbag, who had been standing behind Count all this while. He reached out his hand and touched Count's shoulder. Immediately, a blood vessel was connected to Count's body. Through the blood that could calm Count down, Count calmed down. The wound that Count scratched by himself also healed immediately. The cross embedded in his wrist was fixed. Ah ha ha ha! I was just surprised by the young lord's means. I didn't expect that other than the crowmen, he also hid special forces deep in the manor. Pass down my order. Let Baron Berserk bring the fat worms that were raised at the bottom of the pet hall to battle. Speed up the pace a little and save my face. Baron Bloodbag frowned slightly and reminded Count. Let the chef go to the front line so early? Okay, I'll inform him immediately. But if the worms raised by the Watchers participate in the battle, it might severely damage the terrain of the battlefield. The subsequent battles will be affected. This slender doctor who looked like a doctor seemed to be the real butler of Scarlet Manor. The butler was just a temporary position. In reality, he was sent by the blood god to monitor the manor. The terrain doesn't matter. Let's suppress the young lord's arrogance first. Okay. Han Dong watched as his side's advantage kept increasing. When it even threatened a tomb baron, he didn't feel happy. Instead, he frowned. Strange, the main gate of Scarlet Manor is still closed. There are no aerial blood descendants to provide support. It was impossible for the Count to let an important baron under his command die just like that at the beginning of the game. Moreover, such a huge defeat would weaken Scarlet Manor's momentum to a certain extent. Could it be? Han Dong focused his attention on the underground area of the white battlefield. The eye mark appeared on the surface of the mystic eye, further increasing its ability to see through things. What is this thing? Han Dong transmitted his voice through the raven staff after he saw the strange object. Elder Mizia, bring the twin-headed crowmen back to the manor immediately. Cancel all battle plans. I have already sent 2 elders to assist you in your return. Yes. Although Elder Mizia was confused and did not understand why Han Dong would give up the opportunity to defeat the enemy, this was the Thane's order and he had to carry it out unconditionally. Retreat now. However, just as Mizia was about to take a step back, the earth cracked open. A blood-red worm with a diameter of 100 meters suddenly broke out of the ground. Without any time to react or resist, he swallowed dozens of ghouls in one gulp. No matter how hard the ghoul's gelatinous skin was, the blood-red worms had rows of terrifying teeth and highly corrosive saliva. The ghouls that fell into the worms' bodies had no chance of survival. However, there were still 3 blood-red worms with 100-meter caliber when they opened their mouth. Even the terrain of the battlefield was instantly destroyed. The giant worm leaped high and even wanted to swallow the crowmen flying in the air. At this time, the other 2 elders that Han Dong ordered to sneak into the battlefield arrived and helped Elder Mizia and the crowmen escape from the giant bloody mouth and safely return to the Stuart Manor. At the same time, the half-human, half-insect Baron Berserk rode such a worm subway to the battlefield. He held a terrifying giant axe that was more than 3 meters long in his hand. Basically, one swing of the axe could kill a ghoul. All kinds of fancy fighting techniques were useless in the face of absolute power. The axe swung by Baron Berserk. It could not be deflected or dodged at all. Even if it brushed past the body, the bones would be crushed by the internal force. Once the target was crushed, Baron Berserk would use 2 methods to digest the ghoul's broken limbs and recycle them. The Baron's abdominal cavity was a large mouth for devouring. It could quickly devour the ghouls scattered on the ground. It could directly swallow them whole. At the same time, the Baron also had a unique hybrid demon domain, Maggot Kitchen. A large number of maggots would drill out of the ground in a 10-meter radius. They would eat small pieces of ghoul flesh and replenish the Baron's strength. Baron Mad Feast was the strongest solo existence among the 6 barons. Due to its devouring characteristic and its super regenerative ability, it could fight endlessly on the battlefield. He used pure brute force and terrifying pressure to completely crush his enemies. Also, because Baron Berserk was an insect transformation, other than showing respect to Count, he also showed respect to the butler sent by the blood god, which was the insect ancestor. This made Count very uncomfortable. Because of the appearance of the 4 giant worms and Baron Berserk, the situation was turned around. The thousands of ghouls were quickly being whittled down. Even if the ghouls escaped by burrowing into the ground, they would not be able to escape these tunnel worms. The end of being eaten was inevitable. Sigh. These are the ghouls that I worked so hard to produce over the past 3 months. They're gone just like that. Doctor, these ghouls all have the plague jar in their bodies according to the blueprint, right? Yes, they were all installed according to the Lord Messenger's instructions. The plague in the jar was also mixed with the death plague left by the old king's footprints according to the Lord's instructions. Let the battlefield return to peace and rearrange. I didn't expect Count to have such a large worm underground. Fortunately, I was prepared. On the shattered battlefield, the ghouls' eyes flashed with a dark green light as they suddenly pounced on the 4 giant worms. Before they could tear their skin, they were quickly swallowed by the worms. When all the ghouls were swallowed, the situation suddenly changed. Bursts of dark green light overflowed from the giant worms' bodies. Bang! Bang! Continuous explosions could be heard. At the same time, a strange green plague quickly spread through their bodies. Since each of the worms had devoured over 100 ghouls, the plague instantly spread to every part of their bodies. Boom! Because the plague spread all over their bodies, the giant worms crazily struggled in pain, causing further damage to the battlefield. After a short while, the worms all stopped moving and died. Only Baron Berserk and Baron Tomb were left, and they did not attack for the time being. Just like this, the battlefield returned to peace. They quietly waited for the next attack from both sides. Chapter 490. The tunnel bloodworms were a transportation tool that the head butler had brought with him when he was sent to monitor Count and the banquet. At the same time, these large bloodworms could also be used to clear obstacles on a large scale. They had strong regenerative abilities, and their large bodies could withstand a large amount of damage. Even though they were very difficult to kill, they all died as soon as they were sent to the battlefield. The death of the transportation tool would make the head butler's return journey very troublesome. It would take him at least 10 days to half a month to travel back. Moreover, it would take him at least 10 years to cultivate these 4 large bloodworms again. This made the head butler's expression turn ugly, and 6 sharp mouthparts appeared in his mouth. He used a directional insect sound to send a message to Count. Bach, give me the command of all the mutated insects in your manor. Let's end this farce early so that I can report back to the blood god. Hearing that the head butler was willing to attack personally, Count was overjoyed and immediately gave him the authority. After all, this battle did not have much to do with the head butler. He thought that the head butler would only watch the entire battle. He did not expect the death of a few worms to anger this old man. No problem, but my head chef can't follow you for now. The other things don't matter. Under the Count's voice transmission, Baron Feast and Baron Tomb, who had just been sent out, returned temporarily. Although Baron Feast, who had a terrifying giant axe, had not killed enough and seemed to want to follow the head butler into the enemy's manor. However, he could not reject Count's orders. All the mutated insects are ready. I hope the head butler can achieve a great victory. The manor opened. The second battle had begun. Tens of thousands of mutated insects walked out, crawled out, or flew out of the manor. The most obvious characteristic of the mutated insects was that they were easy to reproduce. Count even personally gave the order to strictly control the maximum number of mutated insects to prevent them from exceeding the capacity of the manor. Staring at the army of mutated insects, Count laughed maniacally. Haha! It's a good thing that the head butler is willing to fight personally. This way we can minimize the casualties on our side. He hoped that the young Lord of Stuart would be able to show some ability and kill as many insect transformations as possible. This group of mutated insects that were attracted by the Watchers were ugly, lowly, and dirty. They were completely incompatible with my noble Scarlet Manor. After the Watchers leave, we'll screen out the better ones and kill all the normal ones. Things seemed to be changing for the better, and Count's mood quickly improved. Once again, he leaned back on the recliner and enjoyed the battle. As the black mass of insect transformation army pushed their way out of the Scarlet Manor. Because there were too many of them, a certain amount of blood aura leaked out from the surface of each blood descendant's body, so much so that during the march a thick blood mist layer was formed. The insect transformation army was completely enveloped in the bloody mist, making them even more threatening. The head butler, who was as thin as a stick insect and was 4 to 5 meters tall, walked at the front of the group with a cane in hand. Not a single blood descendant dared to walk past the head butler. They all obediently followed behind him. The doors to the Stuart Manor opened. The second battle had officially begun. Count himself was quite curious as to what kind of army the Lord of Stuart would send out to deal with these tens of thousands of insect transformation army, and a mature hybrid demon that was comparable to Count. To be able to receive direct orders from the blood god, in terms of blood rank, this head butler might even be above Count. The Crowmen army should be going all out. There are a total of 7 newborn hybrid demons. If they work together, they might just be able to suppress the Watchers. How strong can these wild hybrid demons that have not been nourished by blood and have not received any blessings from the king be? They might not even be able to suppress the Watchers. After all, even I can't do anything to this insect ancestor. However, Count guessed wrong again. However, the Crowmen army still remained in the manor, and showed no signs of moving. Only one army walked out of the Stuart Manor's main gate. Because they had suffered at the hands of the ghouls, Count and the others focused their attention on the ground. However, this time they did not find any ghouls through the blood test. There was only one person who represented the Stuart Manor in the second battle. He was a third-year student from the National Royal Knight Academy Library, Demps Martin. 3 minutes ago, while staring at the head butler who walked out of the Scarlet Manor. The Watchers are going to battle so soon. Or is the pit worm that just died related to him? According to our previous agreement, Demps, I'll leave this insect ancestor to you. As for the other small things, I'll let the Crowmen cooperate with the experimental products to resist and suppress them. If Senior Lunds is free, it would be better if he could provide some resources for the undead army. If the resurrection spell needs materials and energy, my manor can provide it. After all, there are too many insect transformation army. Moreover, there are many transport-type species. When Han Dong looked into the distance, he saw a blood sac insect transformation army that was similar to a giant balloon. It floated in the air at a relatively slow speed, and it carried hundreds of insect eggs. Once it got close to the enemy, the blood sac insect transformation army would secrete growth hormones into the eggs and stimulate them to hatch and grow quickly. There were dozens of such blood sac insect transformation army. In other words, the real number of insects was more than what the eyes could see. Han Dong had to provide enough troops to fight against such an army of insect transformation army. However, Demps's answer shocked everyone. There's no need. I've already submitted an application. Leave it all to me. However, after this battle, I won't be able to provide any form of support. I hope that you, Nicholas, can win the battle in the following battles. At that time, according to the agreement we made in advance, I'll be the second signatory and sign the title deed of the Scarlet Manor. There's no problem with the signature. However, are you sure you're going alone? Even Han Dong was a little confused. The original plan. The head butler, who did not belong to the manor, might only make a move at the last moment. At that time, Demps would use the forces outside the city to delay the mature hybrid demon so that Han Dong could deal with Count alone. However, the situation had changed. The head butler brought all the insect transformation army to battle in advance. Okay, leave it to me. Demps gently placed his hand on Han Dong's shoulder. There seemed to be a hidden sentence in his cold eyes. I'm going to start showing off. You all just need to watch. They stared at Demps as he left the manor alone. Han Dong also fully activated his little magic eye. He wanted to use this opportunity to see what kind of background Demps had. After all, Nicole, a royal family member, could smell a very dangerous scent from Demps. Chapter 491. They stared at Demps rushing to the battlefield alone. Even Captain Lucius was dumbfounded. Facing such a large army of mutated insects, even the Blood Knight Lucius, who had watered his talent tree with the royal blood brew, did not have the slightest confidence of winning. After all, stamina was limited for any creature, and such an army could easily torture a powerful person to death. Elder Mizia, who had just retreated, came to Han Dong. He seemed to have smelled some of Demps' unique aura and guessed some of his identity. As expected of the Lord Emissary, you actually know such a person, Elder, can you see Demps's characteristics? My crow's eye is not enough to see through him. However, I can smell some unique aura from him. Coupled with the old rumors in the Gain Forest, I can roughly guess some information. Let's hear it. He exudes a kind of primal pressure. Even us crowmen instinctively stay away from him when we see him. Later, I recalled the rumors I heard in the forest and some ancient writings passed down by the crowman tribe. I guessed that this young man might be related to the Ainu king. Currently, it's just a guess. I'm not sure about the specifics. After all, the rumors and records about the new king. It only exists in the old information. New king. It's a group of existences that can compete with the old kings for the throne. How they were born and why are they born are all mysteries. However, their existence is confirmed to be used to eliminate the old kings who are obsessed with power and not practical matters. Competitiveness. I'll talk about the specifics after this war is over. Han Dong silently memorized the term, a new king, in his heart. He was fully focused on Demps's next performance. He wanted to see how this massage technician would deal with such a terrifying army of blood descendant. Rewind time to the time when Demps secretly left the Scarlet Manor with a finger clone and entered the mysterious building between the cliffs. Mother, that friend of mine is preparing to go to war with the Scarlet Manor of CHF. I'm inclined to help him, but it's difficult for me to provide any substantial help with my current means. I wonder if I can get some help from you. Perhaps I'll need to face a mature fiend. The person that Demps was talking to was the mysterious existence that came to his rescue every time he left the city, the owner of the mobile haunted house, the madam that Demps called Mother. She was about 2 meters tall and wore a long white dress. Its distinguishing feature was that it had 4 special arms. The 2 upper arms were covering his eyes and mouth respectively. His 2 lower arms covered his left and right ears respectively. Mother's body was in a half-floating state. Only one of her feet was touching the ground with her thumb. Following Demps's request, his mother flipped her hand 180 degrees over her mouth, revealing a dark red mouth on her palm. Dozens of tiny tentacle-like tongues could be faintly seen, filling up the mouth. Some of the tongues were even connected to the teeth, and the scene in the mouth could directly cause an incomparably strong mental pollution to an individual. Mother weaved many tongues into a net and spoke a high-level language that ordinary people could not understand. Since you want to help him, then help him. That cumbersome old king himself is not a good thing. Indeed, the benefits of helping your friend are greater than the price you have to pay. To confront Scarlet Mountain Villa head-on, you need a relatively powerful artifact. You have stayed in the Holy City for a long time and learned a lot from the library and in Destiny Space. Combining fate and the power contained in your body, you should be able to barely control this artifact. Follow me. She flipped her palm back and covered her mouth. Mother touched and slid on the ground with a single toe, leading Demps into the depths of the wooden house. The interior of the wooden house was far larger than what one could see from the outside. Multiple spaces overlapped with each other, forming a complicated structure like a maze. It can deal with all unexpected situations. Remember to return it after using it. Using such an artifact will drain all your strength, and it will even cause sequelae for a certain number of days. You need to make sufficient preparations before using it. In addition, take this opportunity to sign a second signature on the corresponding land deed of Scarlet Mountain Villa. It will be beneficial for you to ascend to the throne in the future. Thank you, Mother. Stepping on the pale white battlefield, staring at the thick blood mist that covered the sky, Demps had a calm expression. He slowly took out the artifact given by his mother from his waist, a dark gold, strange Rubik's Cube of irregular specifications. Demps needed to insert a total of 12 fingers on both hands into the grooves of the Rubik's Cube to decipher it. In addition to the most basic energy supply, it also involved the level of cognition and knowledge. He needed to meet all the requirements to be able to control and activate the Rubik's Cube. And very strangely, the existence of the Rubik's Cube seemed to be only visible to Demps. Others, due to the influence of different planes, couldn't see such an artifact at all. The decipher was completed. The activated Rubik's Cube floated beside Demps and moved forward together. The distance between them was constantly shrinking. 800 meters, 500 meters, 300 meters, 100 meters, within a range of 100 meters, the blood mist had already covered Demps. The head butler, who was leading at the front, didn't take such a young man seriously. He only regarded him as a sacrifice that the other party's manor couldn't fight against such an army of blood descendants. The butler waved his hand. An infinitely elongated, wood-joint insect limb suddenly stretched out. This sharp insect limb could instantly pierce through more than 10,000-legged monsters. Its speed and piercing power were all things that ordinary life forms couldn't resist. However, ding! A sharp collision sound was heard. A layer of ripples spread out 1 meter in front of Demps. The insect limb hit the surface of an invisible barrier and couldn't penetrate it. Even the sharp ends of the insect's limbs were completely broken by the reaction force. Drops of blood-red liquid dripped down. The head butler tilted his head 180 degrees, puzzled by this situation. Tens of thousands of mutated insects seemed to have obtained the head butler's permission. They all madly attacked Demps, who was 100 meters away. They all stretched out their mouthparts, trying to be the first to suck Demps's blood dry. Other than having a full meal, they might even be rewarded by the insect ancestor. Facing the densely packed insect swarm, Demps only stretched out his right arm with an indifferent expression. The Rubik's Cube floated above his palm and was completely opened by the sixth finger. Because they were in different planes, other individuals couldn't see the Rubik's Cube. They could only see a spatial vortex forming in Demps's palm. The mutated insects couldn't resist at all. Their bodies were distorted and sucked into the vortex, similar to the effect of a black hole. In the blink of an eye, the tens of thousands of blood descendants disappeared from the battlefield. Only the head butler, who was tilted 720 degrees, was left. He couldn't understand the situation at all. Chapter 492. This situation shocked all the sentient beings in both manors to the point that they were speechless. Blood descendants were not ordinary beings. Every one of them in the Holy City could be individually targeted by the Adventurer Guild and listed as a wanted poster. Tens of thousands of insectoid blood descendants had completely disappeared in a few seconds. Not even the slightest aura could be sensed. No one at the scene could understand what was going on. Even the mature hybrid demons in the Scarlet Manor had never seen it before. However, Dempsey's actions were not over yet. By touching a special button on the Rubik's Cube with his sixth finger, the internal space was completely locked and the insectoid blood descendants were sealed inside. At the same time, he touched a button on the side. Buzz. A translucent dark golden space with the Rubik's Cube as the center rapidly expanded, enveloping Demps and the butler. However, this space did not have any negative effect. Due to the level of the magic controller, mature hybrid demons like the butler could not be sucked in. When the dark golden space expanded to a range of 100 meters, it completely stabilized. The only effect it had was isolation. It isolated the influence of all external factors to avoid interference in the upcoming battle. In other words, Demps would be fighting alone with the butler in the isolated space. What did you do? The butler asked because he could not understand. I'm just imprisoning lifeforms that are lower in level than me. While answering the question, Demps used his sixth finger to open a passage to the deep-sea treasury and took out a long spear wrapped in seaweed and embedded with shells. It was completely different from the raven in Han Dong's hands. This kind of long spear was a chaotic weapon in the pure sense and was custom-made for Demp. It could be upgraded with Demp's growth. At the same time, he touched the mysterious button on the Rubik's Cube again. Ka, the sound of gears rotating was heard and the shape of the Rubik's Cube changed. The Rubik's Cube was gradually disassembled into dark golden pieces with sides of 1 millimeter, matching Dempsey's left hand perfectly pieced together into a dark golden adaptive glove. Just as the glove was formed, Demps snapped his fingers. Snap! It was accompanied by the sound of metal colliding. In an instant, Dempsey's magic force was forcibly raised by a level through the glove. At the same time, the magic origin force contained the power of the new king. Boom! The hellfire, which covered an area of 20 meters, completely enveloped the head butler. A burnt smell wafted out. Squeak, squeak, squeak. Strange insect cries could be heard coming from the inside, echoing throughout the world. Such a cry made Count, who was sitting on the rooftop of the mansion, stand up in shock again. Although Count could not understand the disappearance of tens of thousands of insectoid bloodline descendants, it was not a big deal. After all, he didn't like these stinky bugs to begin with. As long as the head butler was not affected, everything would be fine. From Count's observations, it was impossible for the other party's manor to have an individual that could directly confront the head butler. The enclosed space that Demps used was simply a path to his own death. However, the head butler was injured. For it to let out such a miserable cry, it was obvious that its source had been damaged. Just as everyone was shocked that a novice knight was able to injure a mature hybrid demon, Dempsey's expression was not too good. He could clearly sense the situation within the flames. The head butler, who was in the center of the flames, suffered much less damage than he had expected. The moment the energy was ignited, the body gave back information and grew multiple layers of shell with heat insulation properties. As expected of an insect that relies on instinct, Demps waved his left hand once again. There was no chanting or casting process. As the flames subsided, pieces of ice crystals floated in the air. Ice coffin, he sealed the head butler, who was in a state of extreme heat, with multiple burns all over his body and his shell completely red. The magic method of alternating ice and fire was executed smoothly in Dempsey's hands. Not only did the fire magic and ice magic have their own damage value, the high and low temperature instantaneously caused the body to disintegrate on the atomic level, which was extremely lethal. The combination of the two was one of Dempsey's killing moves. However, crack! The ice layer shattered. The head butler, whose body was in tatters, used his mantis-like arms and the thorny tentacles growing from his body to forcefully move the ice layer away and escape. Just as Demps was trying to further freeze the head butler, The head butler's eyes suddenly lost their luster. The freezing was complete. However, the head butler completed one thing in advance: molting. The new body of the stick insect with mucus on it quickly separated from the crack on its back. Abandoning the tattered outer skin and luxurious noble clothing, its true body was revealed. The moment the separation was completed, hundreds of stick insect limbs grew wildly from the head butler's body and stabbed at Demps from all angles. Defense: the dark gold gloves were in a pinching position. Ding ding ding, the sound of continuous collisions could be heard. The insect limbs all hit the dark gold barrier that was 1 meter away from Demps, but it was difficult to break through. However, with such collisions, a few cracks appeared on the barrier. The head butler found this weak point. The head butler attacked personally. His arms directly turned into 5 cone-shaped spikes and violently hit the cracks, forcibly tearing the barrier apart. He successfully got close to Demp. Cover: the gloves opened. The dark gold layer that was originally used to construct the gloves quickly flowed to Demps's body, forming a dark gold light armor that covered his entire body. This kind of light armor did not affect the body's movements at all. It could even improve Demps's physical attributes in all aspects. The insect sickles, insect spikes, and insect fluids could not break through this light armor's defense. For a moment, Demps turned into a close combat mage. His right hand held the spear tightly, and he used his 6th finger to adjust the spear, perfectly controlling the details of the battle. His fingers pushed up and he flicked. 2 insect spikes were flicked away and turned into seawater. Heavy pressure from his fingers, and he swung. He swept the area in one go, using his own momentum to force the head butler back, while leaving a cut on the surface of his chest. 6 fingers clenched and he stabbed. The spinning spear instantly arrived in front of the head butler. The seawater, characteristic of the spear, melted the armor in front of the head butler's chest. The spear pierced through the head butler's heart. A centipede died but did not fall down. Not to mention that this was only piercing the head butler's heart. Demps's attack was far from over. The spearhead that pierced the heart quickly poured seawater into it. Using the pressure from the heart to push, the seawater flowed to every part of the head butler's body. While his right hand was wielding the spear, his left hand was not idle at all. It was as if there were 2 brains controlling Demps's body at the same time. A concentrated energy capsule was placed in his mouth. It replenished about 80% of the energy used to control the Rubik's Cube and release flames and frost. Withdraw: the armor that covered his entire body was withdrawn into a glove again. This time, Demps directly drew out more than half of his energy, and all the energy was transferred to his left hand that was wearing the dark gold glove. He began to chant some kind of high-level magic incantation. For a moment, the clouds gathered, and the Thunder Dragon rolled. High-level lightning secret technique, Thunder Dragon descent. The moment the incantation ended, he raised his left arm, wearing the dark gold glove that was surrounded by lightning, and pressed down with all his strength. In the sky, a thunder dragon that was surrounded by a dark gold luster whizzed down, crashing into the head butler and completely devouring him. The seawater that covered the head butler's body further magnified the lightning effect. Chapter 493. The true strength that Demps displayed stunned everyone. Even the necromancer Luns, who had always disliked the genius student Demps, had his mouth wide open. A drop of cold sweat even slid down his cheek. His prejudice against Demps was completely gone. This kind of performance could no longer be described as genius. Magic depth, combat skills, and strategy were all condensed into one body. A perfect combination of close combat and magic. When the lightning struck the ground like a dragon and swallowed the butler, Han Dong suddenly clenched his fists. This scene was too shocking. Even an official knight could not do such a move, Han Dong muttered. Dempus seems to have borrowed a rather terrifying artifact from a mysterious force outside the city. Such an artifact can even leave the current space on its own and exist in another dimension. Only those who recognize it as its master can see it. Dempus, you've really helped us a lot. At this moment, Han Dong suddenly formed a contract with the Dozier Crow on his shoulder. A black shadow instantly disappeared from the Stuart Mountain Villa. In the dark golden isolated space, because he had instantly absorbed more than half of his energy, even Demps could not resist the side effects of the high-speed energy consumption. He used his spear to support his body and knelt on one knee. Because he had just taken the concentrated magic replenishment capsule a second ago, he could not continue to take it. Otherwise, there would be permanent side effects from forcefully replenishing his magic. Demps used the power of the Rubik's Cube to release the strongest chain attack and completely hit the target. The body of the Watcher sent by the Blood God, the mature hybrid demon, and the butler Barthila's bug blood disintegrated simultaneously from the inside out, turning into micron-sized black ashes that scattered with the wind. Where's the core? It shouldn't be completely shattered. Just as Demps was trying to seize the core fragments left behind after the hybrid demon's death, the butler's body was gradually turning into ashes. A finger-sized stick insect that looked like a blood crystal fell to the ground amidst the disintegrating body. The core has formed. It actually reached this step. It was obvious that this blood crystal bamboo insect was the main body of the head butler. It was currently in an extremely weak state and was relying on the core to maintain its last bit of life force. It only needed one more attack to kill this hybrid demon. The blood crystal bamboo insect landed on the ground and tried to burrow into the ground to escape. Its speed was not slow at all. It was too late to pull out a spear now. Demps immediately tried to use his left hand to release ice crystal magic to freeze the stick insect and then pierce it with his spear. But when he snapped his fingers, only a small amount of ice crystals formed in the air, not even 1/10 of the strength of the previous ice coffin. It failed to stop the stick insect from escaping. Not only that, due to using the mysterious Rubik's Cube for a long time, which was far beyond Demp's level, coupled with the rapid consumption of mana several times, his body was under additional pressure. The load had already exceeded the maximum limit that Demps's body could bear. Sizzle, the skin on Demps's left arm began to disintegrate into fragments. His flesh disintegrated on its own like a gray lump. There was no pain during this process, only a feeling that his left arm did not belong to him. A strong sense of weakness swept through Demps's body in an instant, and he could not even continue to control the mysterious Rubik's Cube. The dark gold glove reassembled into the appearance of the Rubik's Cube. Because it recognized its master, it suspended around Demp. But due to the lack of control, the enclosed space that Demps had arranged in advance began to crack and began to disintegrate from the corners. At this moment, outside the enclosed space, hundreds of elite blood descendants had surrounded it. The furious Baron of Feast waved the axe of fear and crazily slashed the surface of the enclosed space. Even the Count himself had set off. Demps's performance made Count feel afraid. Such a human who had not yet grown into a knight could reach this level and almost kill a mature hybrid demon. It was too shocking. If Demps was allowed to grow, Count would be threatened. Moreover, Count had also heard of the legend of the new king. Crack, crack, crack. Just at the moment when the enclosed space cracked. With Count as the leader, the Scarlet Army pressed forward. At this moment, Demps had been eroded by a sense of weakness, and he didn't even have the strength to open his eyes. However, Demps didn't panic at all, as if he knew in advance that he would not be in danger. The sense of weakness swept through the brain area. He closed his eyes. Finally, a picture was received through his eyes. A black feather floated down in front of his eyes. The corner of Demps's mouth rose slightly, and he closed his eyes peacefully. The door of Kepri Yellow Sand rose. A 50-meter-high sand city gate rose from the ground, blocking the Scarlet Army and Demp. It was not simply to let the yellow sand gather together, but to make the yellow sand undergo a deep change through magic, forming an impregnable yellow sand city gate. The surface of the city gate was branded with a huge sacred beetle mark. The ultra-sturdy structure and the enchantment passed down from ancient Egypt completely isolated the Scarlet Army. Even if Count broke through the Sand City Gate in a short time, it still delayed him for a few seconds. The weak and unconscious Demps was brought back to the Stuart Manor by a black shadow. The one who brought Demps back was Han Dong. Han Dong knew very well that once Demps couldn't hold on, the Scarlet Manor would definitely do their best to eliminate such a hidden danger ahead of time. If he wanted to safely rescue Demps, he had to personally go to the battlefield. If it was any other kind of hybrid demon, they would have died in Demps' hands. Unfortunately, the target was a bug and blood hybrid with an incomparably tenacious vitality. However, the chief butler's body is dead, and his origin is seriously damaged. It will take several years or even longer for him to recover to his original state. It can also be considered as removing the most threatening point in this battle. I really owe Demps a huge favor. He looked around the manor. The attention of the crowmen was also focused on Demps. Fighting against an army of 10,000 led by a mature hybrid demon alone and winning in the end. How powerful was that? New king, a trace of respect flashed in the eyes of the crowmen elders. Two two-headed crowmen who were experts in dark healing spells quickly went forward and gently took over the unconscious Demps. They did their best to provide medical treatment, and even sacrificed their own flesh to repair Demps' disintegrated left arm. Among all the manor's personnel, the one with the greatest emotional fluctuation was Blood Knight Lucius. Even the blood flowing in Lucius' body surged violently because of Demps' performance. Demps' performance shocked Lucius like never before, and he seemed to have gotten the answer to his choice of joining the Knights. He released his blood aura and shouted loudly. The hymn of humanity is the hymn of courage. The greatness of humanity is the greatness of courage. This is true courage. Following Lucius's shout, the atmosphere in the Stuart Manor reached its peak. Han Dong waved the crow staff in his hand and pointed at the Scarlet Manor in the distance. All troops attack. Chapter 494. Han Dong naturally would not waste this excellent opportunity that Demps had created. The insect transformation stage hybrid demons had all been sealed in the magic cube, and the chief butler, a core hybrid demon, had lost all ability to fight. Since the progress of the war had been accelerated by several key factors, Han Dong could only go with the flow. This was the best opportunity for the entire army to go all out. Crowman Lord Halo was fully activated. All allies had their movement speed increased by 15%, and the effect of the crowmen was doubled. Elder Mizia, during the battle, you only need to follow me. There's no need to participate in other battles. Yes. After privately assigning missions to Mizia, Han Dong relied on the crowmen affinity, granted by the staff to fuse with the Dozier crows for a very long time without placing any unnecessary burden on his body. All crowmen, follow me to the air and await orders. With a flap of his skeletal wings, Han Dong was the first to take to the air. The dense mass of crowmen took to the air with great momentum. When the time came, Han Dong would lead this air force into the enemy camp. Of course, this was only Han Dong's air force. If he only had the support of the crowmen tribe, Han Dong would never dare to clash with Scarlet Manor. Professor Swollen, open all the advanced experiment cabins and release all the advanced experimental subjects. You will be the leader. I was just waiting for you to say those words. I can't wait to bring these blood descendants back to the laboratory for research. If I can find out the secret of the blood brew, I'll be able to become a ghoul. Not long ago, the professor had used the metal body of the Arabian ghoul to break through into the ranks of hybrid demons. In this war, Professor Swollen would be the overall commander of the ground forces. Stuart Manor Cemetery District. All the coffins in the cemetery were open, and one ghoul after another was crawling out of the cemetery. They were qualitatively different from the ghouls released at the beginning of the battle. The ghouls that crawled out of the depths of the cemetery even had tubes attached to their skin that had not been completely separated. Their bodies were larger, their muscles and claws were more frightening, and they also had the plague halo and a very obvious metal device on their backs. The ghouls released in the first battle were only of the lowest quality. The current group of ghouls participating in the final battle were the perfect offspring of the first generation of ghouls through superior mating. In the process of growth, they were also given better nutrient solutions. At the same time, they must have carried the remnants of the plague from M.O. to a certain extent. Such a high-level plague was enough to threaten the blood brew. Then, a man in a lab coat walked out from the entrance of the cemetery. Its only distinguishing feature was its head. The skull above the eyes had been smoothly cut away, maintaining a circular incision. A soft, smooth brain was exposed to the air. The entire brain was embedded with a gear structure, and the surface of the cerebellum was covered with a metal protective layer. The outer layer was covered with pink tentacles. Looking directly at such a brain would cause a certain degree of visual pollution. Dr. Swollen successfully shrank his enlarged brain back to its normal size. If one only looked at his facial features, he could be considered rather handsome. The head nurse, who had been revived by Han Dong from ghost stories, was Professor Swollen's assistant. She leaned against him. The head nurse's long legs had changed into scalpels. This kind of S-rank ghost story was quite a good fighting force. About 1,000 selected ghouls had all arrived on the ground. They would be controlled by Dr. Swollen's brain and accurately distributed to the required areas on the battlefield. At this moment, Necromancer Lunds communicated with Han Dong through a floating skull. "How many usable ghoul bodies do you have here?" "As many as you want. Senior Lunds, feel free to use them." "Okay. Then I'll stay in the manor to control the undead. I can provide you with about 1,000 undead at the same time, provided that you have enough undead in the manor. Using corpses to revive the undead would consume much less energy." Due to Dempsey's performance as his senior, Lunds naturally could not embarrass himself. He consumed various expensive potions that could increase the maximum energy limit. The right to use the cemetery was all given to Lunds. White skeletal undead that looked like ghouls quickly crawled out from the ground. As long as there were enough skeletons, Lunds could create an unlimited number of undead within the limit of 1,000 people and continuously transport them to the battlefield. Since Scarlet Mountain Villa had the largest number of mutated insects, they had been moved into the Rubik's Cube by Demp. There was not much difference in the number of troops on both sides. Which side the balance of the war would lean towards would depend on the battle between the corps members. According to the requirements, Han Dong would face count alone. In other words, it would be a direct confrontation between the lords. The others only needed to take care of the 6 barons in Scarlet Mountain Villa and the mysterious pet garden facilities. "Abel, come with me. Find an opportunity and lure Count's favorite pet away. You'll fight him alone. After you win, find a deserted area in the mountain area and start breeding." "Okay." Abel did not speak much during the whole process. He had been suppressing the wild, bestial nature in his body. The shadow of a terrifying black beast was faintly discernible on his back. The gates of Stuart Mountain Villa were wide open. The first to rush out was naturally the undead army that was not afraid of death and could be consumed at will. Following closely, strong ghouls rushed out one after another. The ground they stepped on was dyed with a layer of dark green plague. This kind of death plague could suppress the life force that blood brew provided to the blood descendants to a certain extent. Professor Swollen rode on the back of one of the beastly ghouls, using a chain to hold the ghoul's 2 large fangs to control its direction. A kind of wireless brain domain expanded throughout the entire battlefield, precisely controlling each ghoul. In the sky, Thousands of crowmen neatly arranged themselves into a huge black crow under Han Dong's lead. They used the black shadow to cover the ghoul army and attack the enemy troops together. Correspondingly, Scarlet Mountain Villa also sent out all of its troops. The 6 barons brought their blood descendants of different forms and arranged themselves in a square formation. There were bloodthirsty pale ones, blood bats that completely transformed into bats in the sky, blood owl archers that used blood to condense arrows, and blood feast devourers whose bodies were mouths. Release all the things in the pet garden. These guys are making me irritated. Pets that were assembled and pieced together with the best limbs swarmed out of Count's pet garden. Except for the 3 hybrid demon pets in Count's hands that were pulled by chains. Although the rest of the pets were not as strong as the hybrid demons, their strength was infinitely close to the hybrid demons. There were more than 100 of these pieced-together pets. They rushed to the front of the army at the fastest speed and arranged themselves in a conical formation. Their mouths, limbs, and even the surface of their bodies were assembled to form all kinds of strange attack method. Count tried to use this group of pets to tear apart the enemy's front line, which was the ghouls' front line. Just as the 2 armies were about to collide head-on, the front line of Stuart Mountain Villa suddenly changed. A bloody shadow passed through the charging ghouls at an unbelievable speed. Blood bloomed. Lucius, who was holding a sword, came to the front of the battle line and faced Count's pet army. At the same time, the black shadow behind Lucius was faintly discernible, and a slender figure was faintly discernible. Before the deformed and strange pets could get close to Lucius, the parts of their bodies that were used to maintain their cores had already been pierced by daggers. Lucius and Jen's cooperation maximized their individual combat power. Chapter 495. Captain Lucius's super strength, coupled with the qualitative enhancement of the royal blood brew, is enough to tear a huge gap in the front. With Senior Jean's secret help, the gap will definitely be bigger. The 2 armies clashed head-on. Han Dong did not participate in the battle in the air, and even deliberately avoided the battle. However, there was still a bloodbat that came to Han Dong. He directly waved the raven staff in his hand and hit the surface of the bat's body. The place where the staff hit immediately turned into black sand, and in less than a second, the black sand completely collapsed. Elder Mizia, hide in my body. Yes. Although it was a 3-headed crow, it could also transform into the most basic crow appearance. The crow that Mizia transformed into had a circle of purple-black feathers around its neck area, which was used for identification. It quickly drilled its body into the corpse feather coat and temporarily hid. Lord Emissary, are you thinking of going directly to Count? Going deep into the enemy's rear isn't a good strategy. If Count has any other tricks up his sleeve, it will be difficult for me to protect you alone. It's better for you to stay in my army for a while. Currently, our momentum has completely suppressed the enemy, and the number of hybrid demons is also higher. With a few knights with high momentum, we will definitely be able to slowly suppress the enemy and force them to retreat to Scarlet Mountain Villa. At that time, we will cooperate with everyone to attack Scarlet Mountain Villa. Elder Mizia could be considered as Han Dong's half-master. He had taught the Crow men life black magic, and he hoped that Han Dong could accept his current proposal. However, Han Dong had already made up his mind, or rather, this part of the plan could not be changed. Elder, please don't worry about this. I have already made preparations to go deep into the enemy's rear. Look below. Captain Lucius has already torn a huge irreparable crack and led our ghouls to invade. To a certain extent, it has disrupted the enemy's original formation, forcing the nearby barons to use their own soldiers to fill the gap. If we go deep into the enemy's rear, the barons' troops will not be able to spare any strength to deal with us. If they tried to deal with me, their formation would be messed up, and they would quickly lose members. This would fulfill the second victory condition of the Leland Deed War. Besides, with Count's pride as a mature hybrid demon and the geographical advantage of Scarlet Manor, he believed that he could kill me alone. Once he ensured that his formation would not fall into chaos, he would definitely come for me alone. I also developed a member of my own in Scarlet Manor. Through the information she sent, Scarlet Manor has already sent out all of its forces. Even Count's own Imperial Guard is out in full force. Only a few ordinary bloodline servants are left in the manor, and they pose no threat to us. Mizia nodded. The elder's real concern was not the small problem of penetrating deep into the enemy's rear. Instead, finally, I want to ask my lord, can you really face this Count alone? 60% of my preparations have been completed. The remaining 40% is the strength that Count hasn't shown yet. With your help, Elder, I'm confident that I'll be able to face off against Count directly. All right. Old Crow will follow Milord into the enemy's rear. For a moment, his bone wings were fully spread out. While the two armies were fighting, Han Dong charged forward at his fastest speed. He turned into a black shadow and directly passed through Scarlet Manor's Bat Army. After a while, Han Dong successfully arrived at the rear of the Scarlet Manor's army. It was also the area where Count and his Imperial Guard were. It was completely dark. The Scarlet Manor's Imperial Guard, who was directly under Count, wore heavy black armor and carried a greatsword on their back. They were also known as the first possessors of Counts. The heavy armor made a heavy sound every time they moved forward in an orderly manner. The marching momentum of the army was extremely strong. They were completely on a different level compared to the Baron's army in front of them. They were not affected by the head butler's defeat at all. Han Dong even had a feeling. If his army broke through the Baron's front line and clashed directly with Count's Imperial Guard, the situation might be quite bad. Even if he could win, it would definitely be a rather tragic victory. There really are 3 hybrid demons hiding inside, and they are scarlet hybrid demons that were personally infected and trained by Count. As expected, it's not that easy to win. A large part of Scarlet Manor's foundation is hidden in this army. Count, who carried the moving deed to invade other people's territories, would select a strong individual in a village that met the standards, carry out the first possessor ceremony, and turn him into one of the Imperial Guards. Over time, he got such a terrifying army. Han Dong cast a glance at Count, who was in the middle of the Imperial Guards. Count, leave the matters of your subordinates to them. I have something to talk to you about alone. I don't know if you have time? At the end of the question, Han Dong flapped his bone wings again and rushed to Scarlet Manor at his fastest speed. What does this little lord want to do? How could he be so stupid as to run to my manor? A centurion next to Count showed his fangs and said in a low voice, Count, do you need us to return to the manor and directly eliminate this lord? This young lord is highly integrated with the characteristics of the crowmen. He's good at flying and his speed isn't slow at all. Moreover, we can't rule out the possibility that he has spatial abilities. If the formation is disrupted because of him, it wouldn't be good. Less you take the Imperial Guards and continue to move forward and suppress the enemy forces. I'll go play with this young lord for a while. If there's a chance, I'll kill him directly. Yes. The centurion named Les was also a hybrid demon, but his aura seemed to be stronger than some of the barons. He temporarily took over Count's position and ordered the Imperial Guards to press forward. As for Count, he had a wild smile on his face. He took 3 hybrid demon pets with different attributes and temporarily returned to the manor. He played a game of hide-and-seek with Han Dong. Holding the 3 pets in his hands meant that Count completely treated Han Dong as an equal. Defeat after defeat in the war made Count angry, shocked, and a strong sense of excitement. His bright red tongue licked a full circle around his bloody mouth that was completely split open. He reached out and rubbed the cone-shaped goggles on his eyes. all kinds of unexpected situations happened, giving Count an unprecedented pleasure. This kind of situation that could threaten his life had not happened for a long time. At present, Count, who had returned to the manor, was pinching a red crystal between his fingers. Taking a closer look, it was actually the chief butler who had his body completely destroyed by demps and turned into the blood crystal stick insect body and escaped. No matter what kind of tricks you, young lord, are hiding, you will die here today. To be able to obtain a small title deed is not a loss at all. Ha ha. It's been a long time since I felt this excitement. I hope you can bring me some unexpected excitement, Lord Nicholas. Chapter 496. Scarlet Manor, Mansion. Han Dong and the maid, Julia, met in the secret compartment of the mansion. He deliberately left a crow on the roof area to observe Count's movements outside. After confirming that Count did not bring any confidants or guards, and only returned to the mansion with 3 pets, he continued with the plan. In Han Dong's hand was a rough map that was hand-drawn by Senior Sister Jean. It was the special map that Han Dong had Senior Sister Jean draw when she sneaked around the mansion. She had marked out a certain area of the mansion. "My lord, how did you get this map? This is a restricted area in the mansion, and we servants have no permission to enter at all. Guards are usually responsible for guarding it, and even the Baron needs to apply in advance if he wants to enter." "Oh, an absolute restricted area? Senior Jean is really amazing. By the way, what kind of place is it? How sealed is it?" "It belongs to Count's private place, and it is extremely sealed. There are many layers of secret doors and barriers. As servants, we don't know what it is for, and we will never have the permission to enter. Rumor has it that Count will bring outstanding slaves into this sealed area for the embrace ceremony. There are also rumors that the interior is Count's private theater. After the slaves have passed special training, they will be brought into the theater to perform in a reality show. Because Count's laughter attribute is very serious, he needs to regularly release the desire to laugh through various comedies, jokes, or some special activities. There are also rumors that the Scarlet Manor's a title deed is hidden in a compartment deep inside. Han Dong was quite satisfied with the information reported by Julia. He even included Julia in the list of outstanding employees to a certain extent. When he sent her to his manor in the future, she would not be a test subject, but would be responsible for a series of basic tasks in the manor. Maybe these rumors are correct. Julia, you should hide well and wait for the war to end. Okay. I hope Sir will return in triumph. Count stepped back into his manor. The 3 pets in his hand were hybrid beast, a skeleton demon, and a centipede. The hybrid beast was Abel's target. According to Han Dong's request, Abel switched to the owl plus cheetah dual form throughout the entire journey. While traversing the battlefield, he flew behind Han Dong in stealth and arrived at the manor at the same time. At present, Han Dong was sitting at the edge of the top floor of the mansion, looking very relaxed. Count's voice was amplified by the blood energy in the Scarlet Manor. "Lord Nicholas, your performance really surprised me. To be honest, I really thought you were here to give me the title deed. I didn't expect you to have so many tricks up your sleeve. In the remaining time, I hope you can bring more excitement." Count had no intention of chatting with Han Dong. Although it was exciting, he also wanted to get rid of Han Dong as soon as possible to prevent the small probability event from happening. The chain loosened and the pet broke free. The hybrid beast, which was originally suppressed to the size of an ordinary beast, grew to 5 meters in length at a speed visible to the naked eye. It seemed that it could continue to grow as it rushed to the top of the mansion. At the same time, the human centipede pet made with the 1,000-legged elder as the prototype, various kinds of creatures' excellent arms were used as feet, retaining the elder's own hard shell and head, also climbed to the eaves. There was a skull inside the glass cover, and the skeleton demon wrapped in rags also flew to Han Dong at the same time. It seemed that it could release a terrifying mental attack through its terrifying skull. To Han Dong alone, the three hybrid demon pets were enough to pose a huge threat. The first one to step on the eaves and come to Han Dong was the hybrid demon that had grown to 7 meters in size. The two were less than 3 meters apart, which was already within the hybrid demon's attack range. Han Dong didn't show any signs of moving. He quietly stared at the hybrid demon that emitted a powerful pressure, mixed with a few dragons and various rare beasts. It had to be said that as Count's first pet, the quality of the individual was really high. Although it was an individual obtained through advanced patchwork technology, it perfectly fused all kinds of genes together. The two hybrid dragon heads stared at Han Dong and let out a roar that shook the sky. It didn't bite or breathe through the dragon heads. Instead, an even larger mouth full of tentacles opened in the middle of the hybrid demon's two dragon heads. It tried to entangle Han Dong's body and forcefully devour him. Just at the moment when the hybrid demon's attention was completely locked on Han Dong, an even more powerful bestial aura erupted from the side. Bear form. It was different from the previous beast transformation. The bear shadow that covered Abel's body was not an ordinary white beast transformation. It was mixed with dark aura, and the whole body was more realistic and huge. At the same time, Abel's body was more similar to the polar bear, with wide back muscles, twice as thick arms, and white hair attached to it. At the same time, there was a kind of boxing gloves worn on both hands, further increasing the attack power. Abel rarely spoke since he left the city. He had been waiting for such a battle for too long. When the opportunity came, he would completely explode. Palm of power. Transforming into the bear form, he blasted out both palms at the same time with the greatest strength. The penetrating power, the internal strength, and the pure brute force of the bear's paw directly penetrated the solid dragon scales on the surface of the hybrid demon, and its body was broken layer by layer. Chromagus, which was 7 meters long and several tons in weight, was sent flying by Abel's palm. 2 iron chains that had been prepared beforehand were thrown out by Abel. Before the hybrid demon landed, it was dragged away from the side of the manor, away from the main battle area of Han Dong and Count, trying to take the hybrid demon down the mountain alone to deal with it. For such an unexpected situation, the other 2 pets wanted to stop it. A scorching hot feeling assaulted him. Clang clang clang, 2 crimson hell chains with hell's coat of arms shot out from the roof and wrapped around the centipede and the skeleton demon, stopping them from chasing with brute force. Count, why don't you let my friend play with your favorite puppy? Let's continue with the business between the lords, okay? Under the eaves, in addition to Han Dong, there was also a bald man from hell. The hell chains made Count frown slightly. He had never seen hell's system before, but it was this unknown that made Count crack a rather exaggerated red smile. Okay. I only ask that you give me more surprises. Count waved his hand, and 2 pure silver chains grew from the surface of the silver cross pierced through his left and right wrists. The sharp cone-shaped ends directly pierced into the bodies of the 2 pets. Buzz! The hell chains wrapped around the pets' bodies were instantly shaken off. For a moment, Count brought the 2, activated, pets to the eaves in an instant and faced Han Dong directly. Chapter 497. Great Blood Bat Wings. Count strengthened his pet with the silver chain and personally controlled it. He directly approached Han Dong, who was under the eaves. Just as the battle between the lords was about to officially begin. Togu, come back. Han Dong had no fighting spirit at all. He decisively recalled Togu back into the portable prison. Run. He had already planned his escape route. Once Abel successfully took the big dog away, Han Dong would immediately avoid the battle and escape. This was still not the area where the battle should take place. The black feathered bone wings wrapped around his body as he flew away from the roof at the fastest speed. He then entered the mansion through the open bedroom window. He used the shortest route and the fastest speed to rush to the forbidden area of the mansion that Senior Sister Jeanne had scouted. Togu, Chun-Li, I'll leave the situation outside to you. Try to buy me as much time as possible. If your lives are threatened, think of a way to escape. Yes, master. During their escape, Han Dong arranged for Chun-Li and Togu to stay in a secret compartment in the mansion. How boring! I thought that a young lord like you would be like that, new king, and take out some eternal secret treasure to forcefully increase your strength and fight me head-on. Why did you run away as soon as we met? Count was not in a hurry. This was his hometown. He could sense Han Dong's location through the blood aura in the mansion. He could confirm that the target had not escaped and was only moving quickly in the mansion. Considering the problem of energy consumption and side effect, Count temporarily removed the silver chain from the pet and entered the mansion through the open window. He chased after Han Dong as quickly as possible, since there was no silver chain binding him. The two pets that were eager to eat the enemy's flesh chased after him. They were about 20 meters away from Count. After passing through some darker areas with more corners, Elder Centipede suddenly disappeared. Elder Centipede's pet suddenly disappeared. Even its aura could not be sensed. After all, this was Count's own home. However, Count did not know where such a long centipede had gone. It seems that after this battle, I need to tidy up the mansion. The head butler was right. There are too many fundamental problems with just using blood brew as a reward to control the mansion. This young lord actually found a loophole in my manner and turned against me. Haha, I've really failed as a lord. Just as Count felt helpless, the skeletal demon, floating in front of him, had also disappeared without a trace. Count didn't even know where the secret compartment hidden in the mansion was. If Count were to calm down and search, he would definitely be able to find out the location of the missing pet through some small movements, but through the sensing of blood chi. Currently, Han Dong was in a rather troublesome area, and he had to rush over as quickly as possible. Otherwise, some secrets involving himself and the Scarlet Manor would be exposed. Moreover, the matter of Count secretly colluding with a mysterious person in the Holy City might also be exposed. Sigh. How troublesome. Lord Nicholas, you've been eyeing my manor since the beginning, huh? They even found my private theater. If some things are exposed, it will bring me a lot of trouble. He stopped searching for the missing pet. Count chased after Han Dong at the fastest speed. The ordinary guards left behind to guard the forbidden area had become a pool of lifeless black sand. The information provided by the maid, Julia, was correct. The forbidden area in the mansion was Count's private theater, also known as the laughter stage. The captured slaves had the opportunity to perform on the stage. Once they could please Count on the stage, not only could they survive, but they would also get the title of actor. In the mansion, they had food to eat, clothes to wear, and enjoyed the same treatment as a normal servant. The performance cycle was about a week. If the subsequent performances could please the Count and make him laugh out loud, they would be able to continuously raise their status as actors and receive more preferential treatment. They might even be able to obtain the blood brew given by the Count and join the Scarlet family. But if there was a performance that failed to make the Count laugh, the actor would be executed immediately. Except for the private theater, there were more secrets hidden in the depths of the mansion. It involved Count's privacy, the origin of the mansion, and the secret information of the blood god. Han Dong used the life absorption move to kill all the guards along the way and officially arrived at the forbidden area. It was similar to the design of an opera house and could accommodate 600 people at the same time. While Count was watching, he would also bring in 600 laughing staff to add to the atmosphere. The stage, covered by a blood-red curtain, had all kinds of blood stains and all kinds of performance props piled up on it. For example, clown boxes and clown costumes, activity dummies, and some strange magic prop. Laughter attribute. Every lord of the blood god's subordinates, in addition to the main attribute of blood, has an additional attribute. For example, the butlers, Worm and Baron Box, laughter. Unfortunately, it coincides with Clown Pennywise's attribute. Moreover, according to some details I have collected and observed, Count is not completely loyal to the blood god. This can be proven by the fact that the blood god sent people to spy on him. Count used the portability of the title deed to do a lot of private things. For example, he colluded with the chairman of the Writers' Association in the Holy City. The secret should be hidden in the depths of the mansion. Of course, such an isolated area in the depths of the mansion is also completely in line with my plan. I hope Togu and Chun Li can buy me enough time. Han Dong released a few crows to search the secret areas of the theater. He sat on the edge of the stage and quietly waited for Count's arrival. Lord Nicholas, what is the meaning of this? Isn't it good to do it outside the mansion? Why did you have to come here? This is my private theater, it will be difficult to repair it if it is damaged. Count entered the theater through the main entrance. As he spoke, his hands had already made some small movements. After all, Count did not want anyone to find out the secret inside. A pure-blooded hound formed in the shadow of the stage. Its body was covered with sharp spikes, and it suddenly pounced towards Han Dong. Even if such a pure-blooded creature was destroyed, it would continue to invade the target's body in the form of fresh blood. Tap! Han Dong lightly tapped the ground with the staff in his hand. A black ripple spread out. When the ripple came into contact with the hound, its pure-blooded body immediately turned into black sand, and its life was instantly evaporated. Count, don't play these little tricks. Come. Let's fight face to face. Han Dong used his status as a trainee knight to beckon Count, who was a mature hybrid demon. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.